The school board work session begins in 2 minutes. Please take your seats. Again, the school board work session begins in 2 minutes. The school board work session begins in 1 minute. Please take your seats. Again, the school board work session begins in 1 minute.
Thursday morning, everyone. I now call the March 7th, 2024 Administrative Briefing and Work Session of the Marion County School Board to order at 9 a.m. Please silence your electronic devices to avoid disturbing others. Mirroring and modeling how our students begin each day, I ask that you please pause with us for a moment of silence. Thank you. I now ask the school board attorney to explain the rules for this public work session. Good morning, Attorney Powers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This work session is a public meeting as defined in Florida's Sunshine Law. The board is dedicated to full transparency in its meetings and its work. In compliance with the Sunshine Law, the board has adopted uniform meeting procedures, including the right for citizens to participate. The board will allow public comment regarding any work session item listed on today's agenda at the appropriate time. Speakers must fill out a request form located in the lobby and hand it to the board clerk. After the board and superintendent have completed their discussion on a particular agenda item, the board clerk will call a speaker's name in the order received. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. As required by the Sunshine Law, the board must maintain orderly conduct and proper decorum throughout this meeting. Speakers may criticize subject matter and decisions in a respectful manner, but not people. Finally, speakers must be very careful not to violate the privacy rights of others, especially students and their family members, by mentioning their names or other identifying information. Thank you for your attention to these important rules. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Attorney Powers. Good morning, Ms. Martinez. Can you please provide the proof of publication for today's meeting?
The notice for the March 7, 2024 work session was published in the Ocala Gazette on February 23, 2024. Proof of publication has been attached to board docs under proof of publication.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez. We will now begin the work session with the superintendent's administrative briefing. Good morning, Dr. Gullett.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Great to see you today. In case you didn't know, spring break is next week. We have a lot of fun going on outside and dressing up for that. But a few reminders. Nationally, it is also Music in Our Schools Month. And so we've had a lot of great activities and appreciate all of our students for showcasing their amazing talents, not just locally, but around the state this month. And it is School Breakfast Week and School Social Worker Week. So I want to say a thank you especially to our food and nutrition services teams that are providing healthy meals. I had a terrific lunch out yesterday at a school. They do such a great job. Appreciate what they're doing to get our students off on the right path in the morning for breakfast so they're ready for learning. And to our amazing social workers that are out there working hard every day to support all of the student needs in our schools. So a special shout out to them. I want to end with a thank you to our county commissioners for unanimously supporting our impact fees this week, and appreciate that their understanding of the need that we have in our schools to address our growth, 9% growth over the last 10 years and continuing to climb. And I also want to do a special thank you to Attorney Mentor, who so clearly, professionally articulated the work that we did. It took years, and he did such a fantastic job of articulating that in such a concise manner. I really appreciate him for reiterating all the work that our team has done in the district to this point. So appreciate all of them and their support of our students. And so that concludes my briefing. Chair, if we were ready for the first item.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Gullett, and certainly agree to everything you just said.
So I'd like to introduce School Improvement System of Accountability. I'm going to bring Ms. Talbot Irving, our amazing Deputy Superintendent, forward, and we also have some very special guests. So you're going to see this morning aboard two halves of a presentation. We're going to talk about the local level assessments accountability, but you're also going to hear from Mr. Sims and his team about what this looks like at the state level. So you're going to get both halves of that and what accountability looks like all wrapped together. So Ms. Talbot Irving, thank you.
Good morning, Chair Thrower, board members, and Superintendent Gullett. Today, we are pleased to provide an overview of the School Improvement System of Accountability and Support. Our curriculum and instruction departments understand that our core business is students have been working hard to examine root causes, analyze problems, and remove barriers to ensure that students receive the best education possible. We are thankful for the Bureau of School Improvement team's support and look forward to hearing from the board at the end of the presentation. I will now turn it over to Mr. Sims and Mrs. Brusca.
Thank you, Ms. Talbot, and I heard about the end of the presentation for our questions.
Good morning, Madam Chair, board members, Dr. Gullett. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with you today. I'm Dusty Sims. I'm the State Executive Director for the Bureau of School Improvement, and joining with me today is my colleague, Ms. Sandy Brusca, who is our Regional Executive Director for Region 2, which includes Marion County. So we are thankful. Sandy and I have been long partners together in working with Marion County. I recall in 2017, 2018, when we would visit Marion County supporting 13 turnaround schools in the district. And I stand before you today proud with you that as of the December release of school grades, Marion County has 0 turnaround schools with grades of D or F at this time. And I just want to celebrate with you with that fact and congratulate you. Sandy and I feel a part of that because of the success that you've had. So congratulations.
Worthy of a huge round of applause and gratitude to both of you. It's been a pleasure to work with you along that way.
Well, we hope to continue to be able to work with you in some capacities, not in the D or F range, but to continue to work with you to help continue to improve your schools. And we just appreciate the opportunity to continue to partner to be here with you today. So as Dr. Gullett mentioned, we are here to talk a little bit around the school improvement systems of accountability, and we want to bring some clarity to you and our community to make sure that there is an understanding of where and what are all these data points that are coming out when school grades are issued. So I'm going to come here to our first slide. So today we're going to look a little bit at state accountability and school grades, which we just mentioned. As of the December release of grades, you have no D or F schools in Marion County. And we're going to talk about school grades and district grades, but we're also going to talk about the federal accountability, and that is the accountability under ESSA, or the Every Student Succeeds Act, and how that data is calculated and what components are a part of that that may not be a part of the state accountability system. I love this slide right here. We talk through this slide a lot to districts because it really brings clarity around that there are two sides to the house of accountability. There's the federal side, which is that left side of the screen where we talk about the federal ESSA accountability. And then there's that right side, which is the state accountability. So schools, and we're going to talk through the different levels of federal accountability first, and we'll attach that to how that relates to state accountability. But you can see that that sometimes there's some confusion when schools say that they're a CSI or a ATSI or a TSI school. What does that mean? And often people say, well, that's because they're a C or they're a D school, and that is not necessarily correct, because the federal ESSA accountability side assigns a rating to schools, and the state accountability side assigns a grade to schools. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But you can see that schools that are eligible to receive the grade can be any of your schools. Even if they receive a school improvement rating, they will still get an ESSA rating. And even the DJJ schools also receive an accountability rating through ESSA as well. And if you have any questions, please just stop me, because I can go fast at times. So please just say, Dusty, stop. So under the federal accountability side, or ESSA, I want to go through this first because I think this is the side that is the most unknown to most folks, because we normally in the state of Florida just talk about our state accountability system because of the schools that fall under accountability with the Bureau of School Improvement if they don't meet certain measures. So when you look at ESSA, schools can be categorized into three separate areas. The first is an ATSI, which stands for Additional Targeted Support and Improvement. And these are schools that are not identified for CSI. Now that sounds a little confusing at first. Say, well, what do you mean, Dusty? They're not CSI. We'll talk about that. What I mean by that is a school that receives a D or F in the state accountability system is considered under Florida's umbrella a CSI school. No matter how their ESSA rating falls, if they get a D or an F by the state accountability, we consider them a CSI because they're the highest priority schools for our state. So that's why when we define ATSI under the ESSA side, we have to put that caveat that a school not identified as CSI, but has one or more subgroups with a federal index below 41%. That 41% calculation comes off of our state assessments, from our FAST assessments from PM3, if you will. And so that's where that data comes from. And that data was just recently updated after the December release of grades. A TSI school is a school that is not identified as CSI, but has at least one consistently underperforming subgroup with a federal index below 32% for 3 consecutive years. So the ATSI is below 41%. The TSI says we're going to say below 32%. That's a federal requirement. And if they have that 32% or lower for 3 consecutive years, then they fall into TSI, or what we would consider like Tier 2 of ESSA, right? Tier 2 level of support. And then finally, a CSI, or a comprehensive support and improvement school, is a school that can be identified in 4 separate ways. The first is they have an overall federal percent of points index below 41%, meaning they take all of their subgroup data and they determine what percent is their overall. And if their overall is below 41%, they are considered a comprehensive support and improvement school. The second way is that they have a graduation rate below 67%, or a low graduation rate, right? The third way is that they have, and this is the Florida way, because we grade our schools in a state accountability system, is that they have a school grade of D or F, meaning that they're in the one of the lower performing schools in the state. And finally, is that they have a federal points index below 41% in the same subgroup. Say their students with disabilities, for example, has a 41% or lower for 6 consecutive years. If they fall into that 6 years of consecutive below 41%, they would be considered a CSI school as well. So you can look at that somewhat as a tiering system, is that there's the ATSI, TSI, and the CSI, but it's also based on the highest needs of those schools. Okay. So there are some responsibilities for the schools. In an ATSI school, they are required to produce a school improvement plan, and then there's got to be stakeholder involvement that the draft, and then the district has to approve that plan. When you move to TSI, there is that requirement of the school improvement plan, but then they also must additionally add to that a mid-year reflection. And in the SIMS tool on the, which is the continuous improvement model systems in online, there is a mid-year reflection tool that's similar to, it's exactly the same one as our schools in BSI have to complete a mid-year reflection tool, which basically assesses the progress of that school improvement plan in the middle of the year. And then finally, the responsibilities of the school for the CS&I schools is additional steps above and beyond that. So they have to develop the SIP, they have to do the mid-year reflection, then they also have to, if they're a D or an F school, they also have to follow the requirements of school improvement rule, and that is if they're in year 1 as a D or year 2 as a D or an F school, the turnaround options plans or the top plans have to be submitted and approved by the local board and the state board as well. So there are additional requirements to each. As you see, as you go through the tiers, that there are some additional layers that get added as a school moves through the tiers. So the supplemental supports go along with graded and rated schools. So this is the supplemental supports that the district is responsible for and the department. When I refer to the department, I'm referring to the Florida Department of Education. So as you can see there are district responsibilities and department responsibilities. I shared with you some of the school responsibilities. There are also district responsibilities that go along with that as well. It is mandatory and under statutory language that schools or that districts identify and acknowledge to their stakeholders of their schools that the status that they are in under ESSA. So they have to let them know that they're an ATSI school. And then there are some, you'll see through this, I won't go through all of them for you here, but you can see that you have to approve the SIP and review the SIP, that there's technical assistance from our BSI regional team. Ms. Breska's team supports currently in your district, your CSI, ATSI schools. And you will see that they do that similarly to the way they're in school improvement, but not under rule. There's not rule language at this time that supports ESSA supports within the districts. And then the department also has some responsibilities that we provide coordinating our response with the district. We work closely with the district to determine what levels of supports they would ask of us to provide and work with your schools on that are in the ATSI. Usually we look at that as about a monthly visit to those schools, and then we determine what those supports would look like with your district team as well as cooperation with your school-based team to determine how we can support them best. TSI has the similar district responsibilities and department responsibilities. There's not a whole lot of additional supports provided by the district or the state team or the department team on TSI schools, other than we do have that mid-year reflection tool that we do go through and review, and we do have a inquiry tool that we use to go through the data at the mid-year based on the mid-year reflection that we ask why is this data successful? Why is this data not successful? And determine some root causes of the outcomes. The department has the similar responsibilities for this as well as monitoring those district responsibilities. We do have a check-in. We do monthly meetings with the district to determine whether the process of the district supports is happening and how frequently they're happening and what is the data telling us at this point. And then finally, this is really small, so I apologize for that. But finally, when we get to the level of a CSI school, these schools are basically treated just like they would be as if they were in turnaround, with the exception of rule implications. If a school is a CSI school based on their 6 years of consecutive subgroup data or a graduation rate below 67%, we do not have, if they're below 67%, we do have rule implication, but if they're just a CSI because of the 6 years of consecutive subgroup, or excuse me, overall or subgroup below 41%, then we basically do interventions with them based on similar to our timeline in BSI. So all that to be said, how do you get out of this? How do you not be an ATSI, TSI, or a CSI school? Well, it's very similar to as I congratulated you on your no longer having D or F schools, is because your schools all have a grade of C or higher. So with ATSI, TSI, and CSI, to exit ATSI, you have to improve your subgroups to 41% or higher. The same with TSI. You have to, anybody that's had a school any school that's been 3 years or more up to 6 below 32%, you have to get that subgroup higher than 32 to exit. Now they could technically fall back into ATSI still based on that tiering. So they were 3 years, let's say they went to 38%. Well, they're still below the 41, which ATSI requires. So they could technically still there, but they'd exit the TSI status. And then CSI, they exit D or F status. They improve school graduation rate to higher than 67%. Or they have that overall, that FPPI stands for Federal Percent of Points Index. That FPPI would be above 41%. Schools that enter CSI on that last bullet, because they were previously identified as ATSI based on a subgroup performance for 6 consecutive years, the way they do that is they have to improve it to 41% as well and exit the CSI status. So that's a whole lot of information about ESSA. Any questions before I move into school grades, which is a much shorter version?
Thank you, Mr. Sims. Any questions from the board so far? Did a great job of describing how to escape all the acronyms.
Thank you. We have a lot of those. So school grades if we went back to that first slide, so now we're on to the right side of that slide talking about school accountability in the state of Florida. And you're all familiar with the school accountability of the issuing of letter grades every time assessments come out. But this tool, right, this district school grades model, this is how district grades are calculated. But within the district grading model, there is how the schools are graded within this. And so when you look at this chart up here, you will notice English Language Arts has achievement. Those are the percent of students that perform with a level 3 or higher on their FSA, or excuse, that's a bad, on their FAST PM3 assessment. And then third grade achievement is added new to this. This came out last year when we did not have a calculation of learning gains. The U.S. Department of Education said, well, you have to have a learning gain in this category. And so the Florida Department of Ed appealed that and requested that we be able to utilize third grade as part of as a learning gain instead of going back, because we didn't have a learning gain calculation in the baseline measure of our state assessment last year. So with that, third grade did stay as a part of our calculation in that. And to be honest, I can tell you BSI, we celebrated that, and I think districts actually celebrated that because of the hard work that's happening in third grade as well across our state. And they were saying these kids should count towards this too, because we're seeing such success in third grade. So the third grade achievement is now permanently in the grade calculation, which had not previously been. Learning gains, the 0 to 100%, if you notice, they're all out of a 100%, and then the learning gains of your lowest performing quartile or your bottom 25. as well. And mathematics is the same with the exception of third grade. And then science has the achievement on science, which is our students. So elementary school, that's your 5th grade science assessment right there. And then, so that is the categories that your elementary is calculated on right there. And they are determined on those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cells of that. That is how your elementary grade is calculated. The middle school includes social studies along with the 8 categories of elementary, and they also include the middle school acceleration calculation, which is students that may take a high school course code, such as algebra, biology, and also any students that are earning industry certifications within their middle school years. And then high school takes away the middle school acceleration and adds the college and career acceleration, which is that last column. And those are students that pass an AP or an IB assessment with us, and as well as the graduation rate is calculated in there. Oh, and also on the college and career acceleration includes dual enrollment. It also includes students also that to pass the ASVAB or score a particular score on the ASVAB as well. That was recently added last year during legislation, which I thought was great as well. So when you add the elementary columns and the middle school columns and the high school columns all together, that gives you a determination of what the district grade is based off, and you see that script above the chart there, that the percentage of total points earned, and schools are graded based on only the components of which they have sufficient data. What that means is there must be a minimum of 10 students in each of those cells in order for that particular column to be graded. Marion County, I do not believe, has any areas where they would be less than the 10 in those cells. But for the most part, when you add all those together, that's how the district grade is then calculated. So your school data, the elementary on those first 3 lighter blue, royal blue boxes, add the middle school with the turquoise colored boxes, and then the high school with the dark blue boxes, including the front 3 blue boxes, that how you calculate all those school grades. And so we'll be giving you guys a quiz over all that here in just a little bit, and we'll find out how you achieve in each of those categories as we move forward.
Mr. Sims?
Ma'am?
The boxes are also synonymous with the term cells?
Yes.
Okay, just to clarify.
Yes.
And board, any questions on any of this? I wasn't sure if you, did you
Well,
have something?
I was just going to get clarification, because Reddick Collier does fall, it received a D. Is that?
As does Wyomina, and so, yeah, I had questions about that as well. I would appreciate clarification. We had 3 elementary schools that we show as Ds, so would you mind explaining?
Sure.
Thank you, Dr. James, for bringing that up.
Madam Thrower, can I answer that question? Okay.
Please.
Yes, thank you, Dr. James. We have, in this baseline year, which was the 23-24 year of the baseline year, it was communicated to districts that schools could exit the turnaround status, but no schools in the state would enter turnaround status. So even though on the school outcomes of the release of grades in December, you did have the schools mentioned that had a grade of a D, they are not currently recognized as turnaround schools based on the baseline year data. So we were able to exit schools, but that schools were quote unquote held harmless to this year based on the baseline assessments. In July, when school grades are released again in this July based on the 23-24 school year, if those schools or any other school would have a grade of a D or an F, at that point in time, they would then fall into turnaround status.
Thank you for that clarification, appreciate it. Does that answer everybody's questions? Okay. All right, thank you.
If there's any other questions, that's all of our slides, and be glad to answer any other questions. Or Ms. Bruska, any questions?
Any more questions from the board? I don't think we did. What a wonderful job explaining. It's just so nice to see both of you in this capacity rather than back in 2017, 2018. It's a testament to your partnership with our district and all of the teachers and parents and team everything down to the school resource officer that was helping in classrooms, helping kids learn. And I got to see this firsthand, serving both Oakcrest and Evergreen. And it just kind of goes to show you when everybody pulls on the same side of the rope, tremendously successful things happen for kids. So thank you for coming, and really, really appreciate your continued partnership with us.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, may I? I don't know if Mr. Sims, I think you all have to leave because you guys have a lot of ground to cover. I want to just say publicly thank you for that partnership. I know all districts don't have the ability to have those positive partnerships, and we appreciate the Bureau of School Improvement because of your leadership to both of you, and thank you for the collaboration we do for our students every day.
Thank you, Dr.
It's our
Hill.
honor.
Take care. Be safe out there. Morning.
All right, good morning, board members. So before we move into looking at our current year data, I did want to provide a little bit of context around those federal indicators because we don't get a lot of chance to discuss those. So when we look at that first designation, the ATSI, the Additional Targeted Support and Improvement, statewide this year, as of the most recent school grade data, there are roughly 1,700 schools statewide that fall into that first category. Here in Marion County, we have 28 schools that fall into that category. And when we look at the subgroups that we most particularly are seeing with those designations, it is predominantly our students with disabilities or our English language learner students that are the subgroup that falls below that federal threshold. And that's, of course, not just a local concern, that's a statewide concern. When you look at the 22-23 data and look at the gap between students with disabilities and students without disabilities and how they performed just on the ELA assessment last year, statewide the gap is 33 percentage points in achievement between those two subgroups. In Marion County, our gap is 32 points, so a little bit lower than the state gap. When we look at our ELL versus non-ELL, our English language learner students, the state gap for ELA achievement is 26 points. Right now in Marion County, our gap is 22 points. And both of those areas in Marion County, we have actually improved our gap. We've decreased that gap between performance from year to year over the last couple of years. So that's our ATSI schools. When we look at the targeted support and improvement, the TSI, that next level, statewide, there are roughly 300 schools statewide that fall into that second category, that tier 2 category. In our district, we have 15 schools that fall into that category. And then finally, the CSI, the comprehensive support and improvement schools. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry to interrupt your role, but I'm seeing on the big screen that the slideshow isn't continuing. We're still on slide 17.
Yes, ma'am. So this was just some side note data. It was not originally in the presentation, but we felt after discussing that we wanted to provide some context for you based on what Mr. Sims was presenting. Sorry, I apologize for that.
That's fine. We're following along, but I didn't see it changing on the screen,
ma'am.
so I was a little confused.
And we will provide a list to you after the meeting just so you can see exactly which schools are identified by which categories for your awareness.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
So when we look at that last group, the CSI group, the Comprehensive Support and Improvement, statewide, there's 480 schools that fall into that category. In our district, we have 8 schools, but keep in mind 5 of those 8 are actually alt sites or charter school sites. We only have 3 schools of our traditional schools that fall into that CSI category, and understandably, 2 of those were schools that had earned Ds previously, and then we have 1 school that was overall their FPPI, their federal percent of points index was below 41%. So we do provide a lot of tools for our schools to help them track and monitor the data of their subgroups. We spend time in the summer when schools are writing school improvement goals for the new year, helping them dig through and analyze their subgroup data so that they can write really targeted goals for how they can help those students improve. We also provide any of the data reports that my department puts out. We also provide subgroup data for them so they can monitor the progress of those students. And more importantly, also the new data dashboard, which you've heard me talk about before. Schools can actually filter down to subgroup data in any of those dashboards and monitor the success of those subgroups or create their own monitoring groups that they can then watch that group of students across all dashboards. So not just academic performance, but also attendance, because we know obviously the first step to getting those students to improve their achievement is they've got to show up. And so they can monitor a specific subgroup of students on their daily attendance, weekly attendance, monthly attendance, year-to-date attendance. And just to provide a little context, I did want to share briefly a correlation with that attendance. So if we look at our 28 ATSI schools, their average daily attendance this year is 92%, which our district average daily attendance is roughly 92% as well. When we look at those TSI, that second tier school, their average daily attendance is 91%, so slightly lower. And then when we look at our 3 CSI schools, their average daily attendance this year is 88%. So not surprisingly that we see that correlation with attendance. However, I do want to point out with those 3 CSI schools, they've been very focused in using the data dashboard to monitor that attendance on a regular basis. And if you look at their month-to-month attendance, since December, their month-over-month attendance has actually gone up each month. So their focus and their intention on having conversations and trying to identify ways to break down barriers and get those students to school on a regular basis is starting to pay off slowly, but it is starting to pay off.
Great. Yes.
All right.
Just quickly, I appreciate the context on, thank you, Mr. Whitehouse, on the 3 CSI schools, but just for a correction, since I was just at one of those schools, at least one of them is not having improved month over month from the most recent 3 months. So just wanted to make that statement. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. All right, so if we look at our district data for this past year, 2023, this was our baseline data. Certainly we were excited to see that our district was rated a B for this past school year. Keep in mind that we did not include learning gains, as this was a baseline, so there was no way to measure year-to-year growth with a new assessment. And I want to highlight a couple of points on here that I think are very encouraging for us as a district. When you look at our middle school acceleration at 69 points, that's actually the highest our middle school acceleration has ever been since we started tracking this data in 2015, which is a very strong showing for us. We've improved roughly 20 points in that 15-year span, or in that 7-year span, and we're actually tied right now with St. Johns County and their middle school acceleration rate, just to give you a little context in the state rankings. And the same with college and career acceleration. If you take out the 2020 school year, which all of our AP and Cambridge scores were overinflated because obviously students were not in school testing and they were trying to come up with different ways to assess them. So if you remove that year, this is our highest college and career acceleration score that we've ever earned as a district as well, at 63%. And we are also tied with St. Johns County in that college and career acceleration. So some very strong marks for us as a district this past school year.
I have one clarifying question.
Sure.
Is it okay, or are we waiting?
Oh, absolutely, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I don't, so either way, just for a point of clarification, if you'll go back to the last slide,
Yes, ma'am.
for those 69% of students who got a middle school acceleration, can they double dip and get a high school acceleration point as well?
Yes, that's a great question, and yes.
They just can't get it in the same category. So like if they take geometry or algebra, because the high school principals, they
Right.
say what they say. So if you could just clarify that.
Yeah, so the middle school acceleration is based off of the percent of students who in 7th grade earned a level 3 on their math assessment. So whether that was 7th grade fast or whether that was they took algebra in 7th grade, whatever their 7th grade math score was, if they were level 3 or above, they go on the denominator. Students can earn acceleration score by either A, scoring a 3 or above on either the algebra or geometry EOC, whichever one they are taking their 8th grade year, or they can also pass an industry certification. So if they earn a high school level industry certification in middle school, that also counts as an acceleration score, although that piece is lagging because we don't report that data until the following school year. So to your question, yes, if a student earns an industry certification in middle school, they can also count towards college and career acceleration if they earn a different industry certification in high school. That same industry cert would not count for both places, but if they earn 2, one in middle school, one in high school, they would count both places. Most of our students in that high school acceleration earn that score either through passing a dual enrollment course or through passing a Cambridge IB or AP exam. And this past year, we had a handful that also earned it through going through dual enrollment through Marion Technical College, which those clock hour dual enrollment courses now count as well towards acceleration, which is great for those students. So we did see that addition. We don't see very many students that get there on that new ASVAB requirement. Most of our students that score high enough on ASVAB also meet it through some other means. They pass a college level exam or an industry certification.
So as a point of just further clarification, an advanced student, because that would be the student that's taking geometry in middle school, is it also probably going to fall into an ACE, IB, AP delivery model, right, in high school? So that student who's eating up that acceleration, that easy acceleration point in middle school is also probably 100% chance going to pass an AP, IB, or ACE exam or dual enrollment course at some point in their high school career. So the middle school principals are not stealing those acceleration opportunities away from those advanced students.
Yeah, so that's an interesting debate that we've had for quite a long time. So they are not stealing acceleration scores. You're absolutely correct. The challenge that we see in high school is once they've already taken algebra and geometry, those scores do not bank for high school.
Yes.
So many years ago, when we first started tracking this data, if you took algebra in 8th grade, the high school could also count that as part of their math achievement score. But now when we look at high school math achievement, it's based purely on students who did not take algebra or geometry in middle school, which are, of course, are our lowest performing math students, and that's what their whole achievement is calculated on. So that would be
And that is the complicated piece to that puzzle. But from the acceleration point perspective, there's still more than ample opportunity for everyone to get an acceleration point.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Board Member James. And yes, Mr. Sims kindly asked us if we had any questions, so he sort of opened the door. We are trying to move through this information, but we're very interested, so we'll try not to slow your roll too much, but weigh in when we intensely need to. Thank you.
Not a problem at all. So if we look at our current year data, how our students are performing in English language arts on our FAST progress monitoring, remember now with FAST we provide them with a state assessment 3 times a year. The first progress monitoring window comes within the first 30 days of school. The second progress monitoring window, which identifies PM2, is given around winter break. So some schools give it right before winter break, some give it right after winter break. And so we're measuring progress throughout the year on the same assessment that students will take at the end of the year. So we can really see the growth and progress of our students and have a better idea of predicting student performance at the end of the year. One thing we can't do yet this year, we have the state, if you remember last year when they first released this PM data, gave us FSA linking scores because they had not set new scale scores yet. They have since gone back and retrofitted the PM3, the end of year scores for last year, to give us the new FAST scale score for those students. However, they have not retrofitted PM1 or PM2 from last year, so we cannot compare at this point in time how we're doing this year compared to last year when we look at those first 2 progress monitoring windows, even though we would love to see that. Right now, we'd be comparing apples to oranges because they're 2 different scales. So we can look at how we're growing this year from each progress monitoring window. So you'll see in the data table, we've broken that down by elementary school, middle school, and high school, and then 310, the whole district outlook for ELA combined. And that middle area there shows the growth between those 2 progress monitoring windows of the percent of students that are scoring at level 3 or above on that progress monitoring window. And again, keep in mind, the assessment they're taking is an end of year assessment. So it's measuring their knowledge of where they are in the middle or the beginning of the year on skills they should know by the end of the year. So we don't expect students to obviously have mastered all of the year's standards prior to the end of the year. So we know that that number looks lower and will continue to grow as our students continue to learn those skills and master those benchmarks along the way. So our largest growth, of course, is in elementary school, which is to be expected since a lot of those students, especially in 3rd grade, are shifting from learning to read to reading to learn. And so we see a lot of larger growth in that area as those students progress. I also want to draw your attention there to the green columns. And I think this is really interesting to look at our potential as a district. So that second column there from the left shows the percent of students that scored at a level 2 on the second progress monitoring window that they took either December or January, which was several months ago. And those students, most of them are within 10 points of earning a level 3, a on-grade level achievement score. And so if we were to capture all of those level 2s and move them to a level 3 by the end of the year, you can see in that far right column what our ELA level 3 and above potential would be. So we've got a great opportunity there to really move this district forward. And 10 points is not an insurmountable feat for students to grow with very targeted support in our classrooms. And you'll hear a little bit later from the area superintendents about some of those targeted supports that are being provided for those students. So some great opportunities still to come. Same with math. So fast math, remember, is only for students that are taking grades 3 through 8 math. It does not measure algebra or geometry, so we don't have progress monitoring data from the state. We use our own district progress monitoring for that, which we'll show you in just a moment. So again, we broke that down by elementary, middle, and then for the district combined. And again, of course, these are math skills for end of year. They're being measured on all the benchmarks that they're supposed to learn throughout the year. So again, we expect to see lower results at the beginning as students are just getting into that content. And then, of course, we love seeing large growth numbers as we continue to press forward. And again, I captured the percent of students that are level 2 right now that are within roughly 10 points of being level 3, which is very doable. So again, with target support, we've got an opportunity for some really strong achievement at the end of the school year. So this shows our district progress monitoring assessment data for each of those subjects that count towards the school and district grades that are not measured by the state FAST progress monitoring model. And so we've included this year only. It's difficult, again, as you've heard, those of you who've been here for a while have heard me say this before, it's hard to compare year to year because each year we make some adjustments to these assessments, and it's usually based on adjustments to the curriculum map, which we are constantly analyzing data and trying to figure out the best way to really determine the progression of standards and making sure that we're meeting our student needs. So when we look at our first DPMA, which was given at the end of the first 9 weeks compared to the second one, again, these are different standards being assessed. It's what they learned first quarter versus what they learned second quarter, so you can't compare one to the other. But we can see our student performance, and we really, when we work with schools on this, we drill it right down to the benchmark. The overall score is nice, but we really want to see how are our students performing on each benchmark, how many of our students have already mastered that benchmark, and then what opportunities are there for us to go back and remediate or even reteach a benchmark altogether based on student performance. So even though we are seeing growth, I do want to share this slide because I think it's important to note still we have some opportunity and some room for improvement. We're doing some great work, but we still have to accelerate a lot of our work because we want to catch up with that state average and exceed the state average, of course, in both ELA and in math. So you can see where the state is across the board for PM1 and PM2 versus where our students perform PM1 and PM2. And then same thing for math for grades 3rd through 8th. So we are both growing, but we certainly know we've got a lot of accelerated work to continue doing this spring. So when we talk about some of the ways that we're supporting schools through data analysis and through goal setting, my team does a lot of work with the schools along with our curriculum teams and our area superintendents. We work with them through principal and assistant principal meetings. We've done a lot of data analysis with them, helping them to really dive into that data in those meetings. And of course, learning to better utilize our tools and Performance Matters, and of course the data dashboard, which is still a fairly new tool for a lot of folks. So we spend a lot of time working with them to get their comfort level up on using those platforms because they are great tools for our schools when used regularly. We also work with our schools through data cohort meetings. So we team up with the curriculum department and we analyze our DPMA, our District Progress Monitoring Assessment results jointly. And we're looking question by question, benchmark by benchmark, and really trying to understand why are students struggling with this question or with this benchmark, and what can we do to provide support to our schools to help them figure out ways to grow the student success. And so what we end up doing is we identify key benchmarks that our schools can focus in on based on student performance. And we also provide resources to them to make it easier for schools to support the work of teachers in the classroom. So our curriculum teams put out great resource documents that identify, here's the benchmark to focus on. Is it better to work with this in small group or whole group? And here are some quick resources that we already have available that will help teachers to reteach, remediate, or improve student understanding of those benchmarks. And so those documents are shared and discussed during our data cohort meetings and helping our school administrators to really dive into that data deeper as well so they can support the work of the teachers in their classroom. All right, and at that point, I will turn it over to the rest of the team.
Thank you, Mr. Whitehouse. Morning.
Good morning. So it is imperative that schools are supported by all departments as we work toward providing high-quality Tier 1 instruction for our students. It's equally important that our departments work together to analyze data and consider the needs of individual schools so that we can ensure that staff members have access to proper training and curriculum resources to support all of the students in a school. All students must have access to high-quality Tier 1 instruction. This happens through shared expectations of what high-quality instruction looks like. Through a structured professional learning plan, administrators, coaches, and teachers receive training on research-based effective instructional strategies that can be implemented immediately to yield better results in student learning. The graphic shows how professional learning is delivered, beginning with data, which is what drives our content. Using data to highlight areas of need is a consistent practice in our district and throughout all of our schools. Through the data, professional learning content is developed, which then includes opportunities for application of learning. Once the learning is applied, it is important to seek out evidence in the classroom. Administrators have opportunities to walk classrooms in teams to look for evidence of student learning, have in-depth discussion about student learning, and then they practice constructing actionable feedback to teachers that will move learners forward.
Thank you, Ms. Riedel. Good morning, Ms. Kiner.
Good morning. The Targeted Professional Learning Plan was developed together with the academic teams, including our Professional Leadership and Learning team, Mental Health and Wellness, as well as our ESE team. The outline plan for the year focuses on Tier 1 core instruction for all students that does include standards-based differentiated instruction. There are connections to our specific Florida leadership standards throughout the content in the Professional Learning Plan. A few examples of the content that has been taught this year are implementing Tier 1 instruction around the gradual release instructional framework through planning and professional development, and small group instruction. In order to facilitate a strong capacity for learning, the team has developed a continuum of learning this year. Principals participate in their monthly professional learning. Assistant principals then receive the same content, professional learning. Our content area specialists receive their professional learning in their monthly trainings, and our impact lead teachers in elementary and secondary participate in monthly training opportunities where they also participate in the content. This is covered in a 2-week time frame so that the robust professional learning is able to be shared and replicated with all school stakeholders in order to increase those positive student outcomes. In addition to our targeted monthly professional learning plan, the Professional Leadership and Learning team facilitates a principal roundtable called Stellar Start. That is for our 0 to 2 year principals, and we have one for our 0 to 2 year assistant principals. These sessions are rooted in the Florida Leadership Standards, and they include best practices for our current veteran principals, that our current veteran principals share monthly. During the last session in February, 2 of our principals, Ms. Guest and Ms. Lapira, shared how they analyze data for those specific subgroups of students and how they work with their team to create a plan to close those achievement gaps with target groups of students. The Professional Leadership and Learning team also works with 2 of our principals to facilitate the Expert Leadership Series, where a group of selected assistant principals meet monthly to collaborate with district staff, curriculum staff, and current principals. This chart focuses on the types of support that our administrators, coaches, and teachers receive in order to continue to build the professional capacity. One example of an administrator support that I'd like to highlight today is our executive coaching days. These are strategically built into our calendars as principal supervisors and principals. We are able to identify trends that are specific to a common grade level or content area, respond to classroom walk data, and work with the principal to create an action plan that includes feedback and coaching in order to improve those student outcomes. This year, we also identified 5 principals who are going through the executive coaching process as a cohort. They rotate schools as they meet together monthly to walk specific classrooms, identify trends, and provide feedback to their colleagues. This executive coaching process helps grow all of us as district and school-based leaders so that our students grow and have that positive impact.
Thank you, Ms. Kiner. Good morning, Mr. Frazier.
Good morning. So one of the most crucial aspects of our educational mission is improving student outcomes. So school improvement plan serves as the cornerstone of each school's strategic approach. These plans are carefully crafted to address each school's specific needs and goals in our district. For every school with an ESSA subgroup under 41%, goals must be created for those identified subgroups. We conduct instructional reviews at all schools. These reviews are vital for ensuring that our teaching methods are current, effective, and aligned with our improvement plans. We have a digital walkthrough tool, and we use it to collect data to identify instructional trends. Every time we leave a school, there is always a next step once a goal has been met to continue to improve. Each school creates student-specific action plans, which break down the actionable steps needed to turn our strategies into tangible results. This involves collaboration, detailed planning, and regular progress monitoring. Our teams are working with students at identified schools to teach small groups as well. Data meetings with schools are held regularly, allowing us to examine our progress quantitatively. By examining the data, we can make informed decisions and adjust our strategies. This is also where we review each student's discipline and attendance data, as well as hold separate attendance response committees. Tiered coaching supports are provided based on progress monitoring data and at each school's request. This approach helps us tailor our support to each school's individual and contextual needs. Our principals on assignments are leaders who play a pivotal role in bringing about the change we wish to see and ensuring that our action plans are implemented effectively. On the right-hand side of the slide, you will see an action planner. This is the tool we use to record our observations, our strengths, and our opportunities identified through walkthroughs. We also chart the next steps, who is responsible, and the commitments made by the principal supervisors to follow up.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning, Dr. Levengood.
The elementary and secondary curriculum teams provide monthly professional learning and coaching to the school-based content area specialists to build the coaching capacity with the elements of relationship building, planning for instruction, modeling, and side-by-side coaching. Each professional learning session includes an analysis of the recent benchmark assessments, as Mr. Whitehouse stated earlier, that identify the trends and patterns that will strengthen our Tier 1 instruction. An emphasis has been placed on coaching the content area specialists to lead the subject area collaborative planning sessions back at their school sites. The State Regional Literacy Director from the Department of Education is providing our content area specialists with professional development and support in the evidence-based literacy coaching models and evidence-based reading practices. Our professional leadership and learning department, led by Ms. Hughes, has partnered with the University of Florida's Lastinger Center for Learning to provide customized professional development, coaching, and instructional supports with 2 models. There's a literacy leadership series, which are leadership teams, including our administrators, and there's a coaching series, which are tailored coaching certifications to develop highly effective reading coaching with the evidence-based coaching strategies in mind.
Thank you.
On-site coaching support is delivered to schools who may have a new content area specialist, or perhaps schools with specific grade levels that need additional support with either planning for instruction or delivery of instruction. This would include support from our University of Florida Literacy Institute, or our UFLI representatives, from SIPS, which is our Systematic Instruction and Phonemic Awareness, Phonics, and Sight Word, those representatives as well, or Read 180. These representatives provide initial training and then follow up with on-site support with program specialists, coaches, and teachers. To date, we have 76 documented visits to schools to support our interventions, and an additional 165 school visits to assist with planning and delivery of instruction.
Thank you, Ms. Burrito.
The elementary impact teachers meet monthly to collaborate, review upcoming benchmarks, and learn about highly effective instructional practices such as student engagement and formative assessments. They are given the tools needed to return back to their school sites to lead and teach other teachers. It is important to note that 5th grade science impact teachers meet separately to review upcoming content and best practices in the delivery. Secondary impact teachers have facilitated 5 district-wide collaboration sessions this year. Each session offered an average of 18 subject area collaboration. We mentioned these are facilitated by the principal on assignment and the assessment team. They work directly with the teachers to develop action plans that address individual students and or groups of students to create plans.
As you know, 3rd grade proficiency has a standalone cell in the 2024 school grade calculation. This is in addition to counting in a school's overall 3 through 5 proficiency. Our current 3rd graders were kindergartners during the 2021 school year, the year when absences were at an all-time high due to the pandemic. Due to these circumstances, we wanted to have a face-to-face opportunity for collaboration, data analysis, and prioritizing instruction for our 3rd grade teachers. And on January 31st, we had approximately 300 participants attend the 3rd grade Game Changers session in 2 sessions at the Mary Sue Rich Community Center, facilitated by Kelly Brower and Laura Singleton, with the help of our communications department as well. Teachers heard inspiration from the Florida 2022 Teacher of the Year, Sarah Painter, learned more about the school grade calculation, and received curriculum instruction support from the curriculum team. This was necessary to ensure we had a set of shared goals and expectations that would increase student outcomes. All 3rd grade teachers have an opportunity to join virtually monthly additional follow-up sessions to continue to receive curriculum and instruction support. This project continues to be supported in collaboration with the Professional Leadership and Learning Department. Also, through a Science of Reading grant, we were able to hire 33 tutors at 15 schools to work directly with our students who were retained in 3rd grade for the 23-24 school year, or 4th graders who were promoted for cause. Principals hired these tutors beginning in October and can continue to hire them throughout the remainder of the school year. Tutors work up to 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, and they provide direct support to specific students in the classroom. With the help of our Federal Programs Department and Employment Services, we were able to get tutors hired and onboarded expeditiously so that they could begin with the direct support to our students immediately. We use Laura Singleton, one of our program specialists, to directly support the tutors and the teachers who have those retained 3rd graders and promoted for cause 4th graders in their classrooms. And we did provide an instructional framework for the teachers as well. Science Saturdays began on January 20th and includes opportunities for 5th grade students to participate in hands-on learning exploration in science labs, reading, and in group discussions. Each day is comprised of focused instruction to review background knowledge and skill, collaborative and independent work, aligned to state item types, and hands-on labs. This adds an extra layer of support for students who need assistance in ELA and science. The camps run from 8:30 to 11:30 a.m. on 8 Saturdays at 8 schools. Schools were selected based on ELA proficiency data and science data over the last 2 years. A total of 110 students have attended camp as of last weekend. And the content that was created is available to all of the schools, so they can have access to that. In addition, Science Spring Break Camp will take place next week at 2 schools, Spar Elementary and Dr. N.H. Jones Elementary, with approximately 70 students signed up to attend. This will include additional hands-on learning and opportunities, as well as foster student collaboration. Mrs. Kemp has done a great job organizing these science opportunities for our students.
So before expanding a little bit about what Dr. Livingood was saying in regards to our teacher data meetings, I just wanted to highlight that many of our struggling schools with attendance do have attendance response committees that include all stakeholders involved in that as well. Our community members, that was an initiative that Ms. Thrower started many years ago that has helped a lot of our schools improve their attendance. But we are working all together as a school board, our academic teams, and our community to try to help increase our attendance where we see we have struggling issues. So in our teacher data meetings, we aim to identify students who are on track for proficiency. We must acknowledge and celebrate these students while considering how to support them further and enrich their learning experience. Next, we delve deeper into identifying students who are on track for learning gains. Recognizing just the end outcomes, but also the progress being made is essential. It highlights our commitment to every student's growth journey. The most targeted effort in our meeting will be where we create student-specific prescriptive plans. These are students who are aspiring to meet specific benchmarks. Here we tailor our strategies, aligning the appropriate resources to support them in a very focused manner. The photos on the slide capture the essence of our data meetings. Notice the collaboration, the focus, and the shared drive to support our students. These are the meetings that lay the groundwork for individual student success. So as we wrap up today's work session, or this presentation, I'd like to summarize the key points from the latter part of our presentation. Slide 17 onward detailed our comprehensive school improvement system of accountability and support. The academic service team members have shared the data and strategies that underpin our work, from the district's grade of a B in performance in various academic areas to the progressive monitoring systems we've set in place. We've delved into our district data for English language arts and math for the 23-24 school year, underscoring the progress and areas needing attention. Our focus has been establishing clear goals, facilitating targeted professional learning, and collaborating closely with teachers to ensure that every student has the opportunity to reach proficiency and beyond. We have emphasized the importance of action planning and data meetings to identify the students on track for proficiency and learning gains and create prescriptive plans for those who need additional support. The Building of Coach Capacity segment highlighted our commitment to enhancing the skills of educators through various programs and training, such as the UF Lassinger Academy and the Regional Literacy Director support. We aim to provide effective, evidence-based instruction and intervention through collaborative planning and side-by-side coaching. In the Collaborating with Teachers section, we discussed initiatives like Impact Teacher Meetings, Science Saturdays, and Spring Break Camp, which have been designed to enrich our students' educational experiences and address the specific learning needs at every grade level. The Teacher Data Meeting section outlined our proactive approach to personalized student learning experiences. These meetings are crucial for ensuring that our actions are data-informed and student-centered. To conclude, we have shown that the Marion County School District is resolute in its mission to provide an accountable and supportive high-quality education for every student. As we move forward, we stand committed to continuously improving our strategies to meet the diverse needs of all students and prepare them for a successful future. Thank you for your attention and support.
Thank you. Dr. Gullett.
Thank you. Thank you, team. Board, there's so much I want to say, but I'll try to be brief. This is my passion. Lots to unpack. Thank you to the team. They know that I push pretty hard, ask a lot of tough questions. And when I got here, board, as you recall, we started with our core purpose is about student success and confronting reality and where we needed to go and how we needed to get there. I'm incredibly proud of what I see every day in schools, even just yesterday having some conversation with some principals about we've moved from being reactive and waiting till the data comes and working on the interventions to our core work in the Tier 1 area of instruction, which we started in the first year when I got here. And so I'm really proud of everyone who's working so hard in the schools, to this team, for working side by side with our school leaders and teachers, and at the school level for seeing the collaboration, because this is just about work. This is about good teaching. This is about research-based practices. This is about taking a look at data and responding to data immediately to address student needs. And so that's how we reach every child. It's not about a program, and I think we've moved away fully now, I hope, from a focus on what's the fix, what's the program. It's not about a program. There is no magic program. It's about hard work. And I thank our teachers and our support staff and our leaders in the field every day, because I see that shift occur. And I'm grateful because it is just a lot of hard work. All the support services that are needed to ensure that every child is met where they are with all of the complex needs that they have. A lot of them have very adult issues that they're facing. They need specialized support for some of our ESE students and our ELL students and a variety of needs, but we're being very prescriptive in nature by what we do and how we provide it, and we don't put anyone in a box. And so I am, again, so grateful for the partnerships that we have and the tough conversations that everyone's willing to have to say, are we there yet? No, we're not. You see that we're seeing some success, and I do believe, and I shared with principals this last week about even with our early learning success of getting our kids off on the right path when they come into kindergarten, that will pay off for years to come, past all of our time here. But we need to be diligent and we need to be relentless in reaching every child every day. And I can tell you as your superintendent, I am committed to doing that. And again, thanks to the team here and the team in the field for being incredibly focused on students and whatever the students need. So I'm grateful. Thank you, board.
Thank you, Dr. Gullett, and thank you to the team and to Ms. Bruska and Mr. Sims for the incredibly informative presentation. So I'll open it up now to the board members for any further questions or clarifications. Board Member Campbell, lead us off.
Sure, I'll lead us off. So I just have a couple of questions, nothing of huge magnitude. I did want to first ask about the tutors that we've hired. So I know that was discussed, that we have a one-on-one tutor relationship occurring with those students who were on track to be retained or the promoted for cause. Are we seeing that data with that one-on-one tutor is increasing that student's performance? And does it appear that those same students are going to need to have the one-on-one assistance with a tutor extended, or will those tutors be used for additional students in the future?
Good questions. So the tutors work through the end of May, so they will have them for the remainder of the year. Some of the tutors, the teachers who received the tutors were teachers who had third grade retained students or fourth grade promoted for cause. So there could be anywhere from maybe 2 students to maybe 10 students. Well, probably not as high as 10, but the numbers vary per classroom. So it wouldn't be like a one-on-one tutor student, but that tutor would work with all of the students in the class that are either retained or promoted for cause. We are collecting data. We have all the data. We were waiting for PM2 to close to look at PM1 to PM2. Where it varies is that tutors were hired at different times. So we may have a tutor, Mrs. Smith, with these 5 students who was hired in October, but then another tutor who maybe was hired in January. So we have those variables to work through. Some of the kids are making gains, some are, some maybe aren't, but we are monitoring that data closely, and the ladies who are going out monitoring the tutoring and providing assistance are tracking that data very closely, because in the end, we want to see how effective this program was. So we will have to go back and look at dates tutors began and work through those variables.
Okay, thank you for that. My other question, and it's predominant around those 3 traditional schools that are currently in CSI status of sorts. I'm saying of sorts because they're not really, but they kind of are, but anyway. Mr. Whitehouse alluded to having 8 schools. 5 of those are alternative sites, so I'm somewhat interested in those because we don't have as much control, I'll say, over those 5, but let's talk about those 5 first. What are we doing, or is there something we can be doing to support those 5 schools? So that ultimately does impact our district grade, as we know, if they do stay in a lower tiered status. So what are we doing to support them is my first question with those.
So I'll start that off, but I'll probably have to defer to the team on some of that. So schools that we're looking at within those 5, it's actually 4 alternative learning sites, are 2 traditional alternative schools that we've worked with for years, Surrey and New Leaf. Also Marion Technical Institute, which obviously has a very different population of students and very small population of students that they're evaluated on for their school improvement rating, and Hillcrest School, which of course we know has a very unique set of students as well. And then McIntosh Charter School, which is the other school that's in that group. So we certainly help them with data analysis, making sure that they know where their subgroups are. They have access to the same tools as our traditional schools. They have access to Performance Matters, to our district progress monitoring assessments. They have access to the data dashboard. So we do try to make sure that they have tools in place for monitoring that. But I will certainly have to defer to the team in terms of what that looks like on an ongoing basis throughout the year.
So thank you, Mr. Whitehouse. Frankly, just putting names to the schools helps me understand exactly what we're talking about and who we're talking about. This board understands, based on our most recent board meeting conversation, a bit about what our expectation for an alternative learning site is and how we had to reject our RFP because we didn't have someone who's applied to reach the academic standard that we are seeking in that. So just putting names to those schools actually helps me understand that. My question then still remains in that CSI school. So we do have 3 traditional schools, elementary schools, that did receive a baseline grade of a D this year. Specific to those schools, while I understand attendance continues to be a significant struggle in those schools, I continue to say if we could get those 14 to 15% of students actually attending school, we would see significant improvement in those school grades. But we looked at all of this collaborative, we're improving here and here and here. What are those 3 schools specifically looking like? Does it look as if we are going to be able to get them out of that D status, or are we, and I don't want to single a specific school out, we can talk about them 3 collectively, the 3 of them collectively, but what is that looking like specifically data-wise?
So I do want to clarify first that the way that the federal designation works for the 22-23 school grade, because we applied for a waiver, part of that waiver was that we would not change any designation from the 21-22 school year. So the schools that you're referencing actually are not CSI by federal designation at this point. If that grade was to maintain, they would for next school year. It's actually our prior D schools from the 21-22 school year that are the schools that are still considered CSI as a carryover from the previous year. There were no changes in designation because it was a baseline year.
Okay, well, let's then talk about the 3 current schools, state. So let's take off the CSI rating and talk about specifically what Mr. Sims was referencing, that this is kind of that hold harmless year, and we did have 3 schools that have a D ranking from last year. So what is the data looking like on those 3 specific elementary schools? And does it look like we will be in Ds for those 3 schools based on Progress 1 and Progress 2? Or are we making significant enough improvements that we're not going to that we're hoping to not have those in D status.
I think that's a really far stretch in a prediction, and we try to get away from doing that, especially this early in the year, because when we look at PM2 data, for a lot of schools, they assessed prior to winter break, and so a lot of learning can take place between January and May when those assessments are given. So trying to forecast out and say, yes, we think this school is going to make enough progress or not is really hard. I can say for certain those schools have improved from PM1 to PM2 in terms of their percent of students that are scoring a level 3 or above, and certainly we are very detailed in terms of getting down to the student level, making sure that we have specific plans on an individual student to help them grow and monitor their data through our benchmark assessments, through our district progress monitoring assessments, our other tools that we have at our disposal to make sure those students are seeing that growth and achievement.
Thank you. The final question on that, and I think it's a little bit more of a global question. I know I had sent some questions specifically to Ms. Talbert Irving ahead of this presentation today, and it does revolve around the attendance in comparison to our level ones, really is what I'm looking at. So if we can say that the 12 to 14% of students that are not attending school on a regular basis are all our level ones, or maybe they're level 2s, level 3, I don't know, but I am interested in knowing how we can actually connect and correlate our attendance with our data. And I know we have it, I just haven't seen it, so that's what I'm asking. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, does that conclude your question?
That concludes my questions.
Madam Chair, may I go back, Mr. Whitehouse, to the prior question about predictability? I call it predictability, right? Part of the reason that we're not able to answer that question as far as predicting a grade is because there was not a correlation statistically of a predictability score aligned with FAST and that PM data, correct?
Yeah, so part of the struggle, as I mentioned before, is that we don't have retrofitted scores for last year for PM1 and PM2, so we really can't even gauge, here's where we were last year and where we ended versus where we are this year and where we could potentially end. So that's a big part of the struggle. Again, I think another part of that struggle is because that PM2 data occurs at midpoint in the year and there is so much instruction that takes place in that time period. We could say right now we have 30% of our students that are level 3 and above, but I would have no way to really say for certain, yes, I can guarantee these kids are going to make it and these students aren't. For a lot of students, it just depends on how they show up on that test day in May. I mean, some students trend well all year and have a rough day on that day of the assessment and don't do well based on that one day. So difficult to say, but also part of that school grade is based off of things that aren't tracked by the state. So our 5th grade science is part of elementary school data, and that's not tracked by the fast progress monitoring. We track that internally through our own benchmark data, and we don't have updated correlation data, to Dr. Gullett's point, to say that students who scored here on our science DPMA scored here on the state science assessment because it was a one-year score, and we really need to track that longitudinally to get a better understanding of how students perform on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gullett. Board Member Cummings?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Whitehouse, and thank you guys for the presentation. I missed part of it, but just kind of coming in on the question that Dr. Campbell had. I understand we don't forecast make those predictions, but I do want some clarity so that everybody understands. We do know those 3 schools that were in that position, and the district has provided additional resources and support to those schools to prevent that from reoccurring. Am I correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Cummings. Board Member James?
I just wanted to ask Mr. Whitehouse a clarifying question too. So historically, the state changes the test a lot. As you've spent time in education over however many years, there's a shift every 5 or so years. But once we get settled, after the shift changes, a crosswalk is developed, which essentially allows people to say a kid who was this year will then be this the next year. Is it correct to say that we don't have a crosswalk yet?
We don't have one, nor is the state providing one.
Right, that's what I thought. And so from my historical testing coordinator, administrator seat, I just want to share, the reason this is so challenging is because there is no crosswalk, there is no comparative, it just doesn't exist yet. This time next year, there'll be one, presumably. And so then we'll be able to really do more predictable data. But at this point, it is just so hard to make those, we're planning based on the data as it is live, right? But to predict how it will go is really challenging because that crosswalk just doesn't exist yet. And so I just wanted to kind of add that piece to it, just to, I guess, validate what you've said, Mr. Whitehouse, because it is challenging at this point to make those predictions.
And if I may add, Board Member James, to your point, that's why we like to have some consistency so a probability can be established. In the past, those of us been around for a long time, you get to even like an 80% probability of if they scored at this level or in this range, you can predict that they're going to be here. So we hope that, and the Department of Education was very clear coming out of the gate that they were not going to do a crosswalk. So, but we do hope that we'll be able to provide that. That helps us to guide where they are, what that target is. It helps teachers, it helps our school teams to know, we're in range, because to Mr. Whitehouse's point, which is really critical, there's a lot of learning left to be done. It's not, we get to the test and we stop. The learning should occur continuously, but having a target of knowing, just like in the classroom level, they're on target with these skills, these benchmarks, these standards, is really important to inform instruction. It's really about informing instruction so that we can deliver that. So we hope that they will provide us some guidance next year.
Chair, if I may, historically, once the dust settles, I remember a time your predecessor was in charge of the department when I was an assistant principal, and we will get to a point where we can do predictable data based on our DPMA scores and the crosswalk, and we will be able to say if a kid is hitting at this percent, statistically, the likelihood is XYZ. And probably by next year, unless they blow it all up and start over again, we'll probably be there. That's just really hard right now because we don't have all of those variables yet. But that as my experience has always been the intention of the assessment department, is to get to a point where, because that helps you be a more informed leader and reading coach and reading teacher, is to say, if this kid is hitting at this mark, I know that they're probably going to get here based on statistics, and I can continue to meet them where they are, but I don't necessarily have to hit them with all the gas, and I can shift my energy into focusing on this small group because they need more support in this area. And so I think we'll get there. We just unfortunately don't have all the pieces to the puzzle right now.
Yeah, and I would throw in a wrinkle there too, Dr. James, because we're playing with different assessments now. These are computer adaptive assessments, whereas in the past we were not dealing with assessments that adapted to the performance of the students. And actually going forward, all of our assessments, science, all of our EOCs, they're all going to shift to a computer adaptive model. So it makes it a little bit more challenging to forecast a student because students could get different passages, they could get different lengths of passages, they could get different levels of question leveling based on how they're performing on the prior questions or sets of questions. So it does add a little bit different challenge to trying to get that predictability accurate.
Interesting. Thank you. Okay. Vice Chair Conrad, did you have anything else?
I was just going to say I appreciate the thoroughness. I think the team is doing a really good job. When I talk to people who are participating in the professional development, they feel like it is valuable. I know that Vice Chair Conrad has made remarks to that, so I'm sure she'll probably touch on it. But there's value in the things people are participating in, and that makes me happy because we don't want to waste anybody's time. And so if people are going to be taken off their campuses or on a weekend to spend time on a project and professional development, the meaningfulness makes it much easier for them to be off their campus. So I just wanted to add that nugget that I think that there's a lot of value there. And the only feedback I've received from professional development would be the continued pain of early release days and what happens on campuses on early release days. And so if we were going to focus on anything tied to professional development, I would continue to try to monitor what happens on an early release day, which is why I was not a proponent for the 2-hour early release, because I don't think that what happens on our campuses is more valuable than the learning that is lost from doing it. I know that principals want the time with their certain staff members, but staff members who have lots of seniority on campuses are struggling to find, I don't know what the right word is, but it's not exactly meeting their needs. So I just wanted to share that nugget. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member James. Vice Chair Conrad.
Yes, very quickly. Thank you, Mr. Whitehouse and team, for the presentation today. It certainly was a overload of information. So I just have a few things I want to share, and several of them are just thank yous if you'll take back to your teams. When I visit specifically teachers, the lessons that are provided and the resources that are provided are so thorough that they can't get through everything that's provided to them. And I just think that's an awesome problem to have. And so I know that's a lot of work. At least the pieces of it that I've been able to put my hands on have just been extremely beneficial. They've been relevant. And so I'm just thankful for that piece and for the team of people that are working to put these resources together behind the scenes. Especially as you think about this post-COVID, and we have a lot of teachers teaching that didn't go to school to be teachers, and so how important that piece is in driving the Tier 1 instruction, which seems so basic, but there's just been so many challenges, in education that is a building block for increasing our student success. So thank you for that team. I also was really excited about all of the things you shared. Let's see, what slide are we on? 31. And so the game changers and the tutors and the science Saturdays and the spring break camp. And Ms. Riedel, I was really excited about the numbers you reported, that because our district offers a lot of opportunities, but sometimes people don't show up. And so when you shared that, I was just really happy to hear the numbers were in the hundreds, that the team had done so much work and we had families show up for those successes. And so I'm excited about that. My only question is, I'm wondering, we have all of these things up and running. How are they funded? Since we're losing ESSER dollars, are we going to be able to continue these awesome programs that we've started? And what does that look like moving forward?
And yes, and some of them are grant funded. So we do get grants. The tutors were for the Science of Reading grant. So we do use grant funding in addition to ESSER funding. So we just need to really get creative and be innovative and really seek out opportunities for more grants and additional funding so that we can continue, because we are, sorry. Okay. Go ahead.
That's a very good question, Vice Chair Conrad, and thank you. I just want to say that Dr. Varner and Ms. Boston Ellison and myself have met with Deb Riedel and Dr. Livingood to talk through all of this because we want to continue it. So we have a good plan in place to continue all these things, removing the ESSER dollars, but looking at different funding sources, Title I, Title II, Title IV, mental health and wellness. Ms. Yvette Del is going to get me for saying that, looking at mental health and wellness. And also Dr. Varner has charged her department with looking at grants. So we had a grant that was a competitive grant that everyone got for the Stronger Connections, which was a good thing. So they're looking at grants as well, but we don't want to interrupt the services. So we've done that. And Ms. Boston Ellis is quite happy. So I hope she's smiling.
That she is. Ms. Riedel, I have one more question for you. With the, I'll say, above average turnout for these activities, was there a strategy the school used to recruit families to come? I personally feel it's probably part of the relationship piece that the teacher and the administrator have with families, but how did they raise the numbers for participation?
Yeah, absolutely. So the schools who chose to pilot these programs were very excited and on board from the get-go. So they just, like you said, relationships, they sent out invitations, they targeted certain students for the programs, but then again, if a parent requested their child to attend, they took anybody who wanted to attend. So they were very strategic in how they targeted and reached out to families, but they really did do a great job with that.
Thank you. And my final question, and I don't know that there's an answer today, but as we move forward, and I know that we're still, in the middle of the school year, at what point will we be able to predict or have a solid number on the retention of our third graders so we begin planning for that attack? And I know everybody's touched on that, but at what point, with whatever data we have, are we going to begin to predict what we need for next year?
I would say same for our 8th graders, too. I'm looking forward to the day when we have no more 8.5s.
Yeah. So we actually have several more assessments coming up, so I know you're aware of. So the first part is based on our PM3 data for 3rd grade students. So we'll know after those students test, and they're testing the very first day of the window in May, we'll know which of those students did not earn a level 2 or higher, so we can then look at additional ways of promoting those students. So the 2 other assessments that we use are going to be iReady, which we've used in the past, which has a requirement, a state threshold for those students to be able to be promoted for cause if they meet that with iReady, and then also our STAR assessment, which we use right now for our K1 and 2 state progress monitoring, but we also purchase additional licenses for 3rd grade to be able to have that as an alternate promotion method for those students. And of course, portfolio, is still always an option for 3rd grade as well. So we've got quite a few assessments and opportunities that we've got to go through first until we can really get a better feel for where we're going to be after all that. So it'd probably be more like June when we get a better idea.
Okay. And when is PM3?
So it starts the first Monday of May. I think it's May 1st. I'd have to double check my calendar, but it starts the beginning of May, and so 3rd grade would test that first day, and then the following week, those that did not meet it would take STAR and iReady to be able to look at promotion calls.
And then the iReady piece is, how is that working? So have we targeted 3rd graders to, because I know we're not using it as a district, correct? And so is that targeted for specific 3rd graders or 3rd grade classes? Because in my experience, that's been an ongoing, it meets you where you are and you move at incremental levels to increase their ability. So what does that piece look like?
Yes, so we are not using it district-wide. However, we did purchase iReady diagnostic licenses for 3rd grade. So our 3rd grade students took AP1 and AP2 so that we can monitor their progress and also get a better feel for where those students are and give us another data point for those 3rd graders to examine. So they'll be familiar with that platform when they take the AP3 in May. It won't be a brand new assessment for them. And schools also had, many of them purchased Toolbox as well. So they were still utilizing Toolbox. So even though we weren't using the daily and computer instruction that we would typically see in the past with iReady, we still have the data points and access to additional tools.
Great, thank you very much. Again, please thank your teams. When we're out and about in the community, I always feel very proud of all the opportunities that you all offer to our students to help them succeed. Sometimes they don't show up, but there's just so many things that you all are working on every day outside of regular curriculum, helping move our kids forward. So just thank you, and please thank your teams.
Thank you, Vice Chair Conrad. Board Member James.
I just thought of 2 more quick things. When are we going to learn about summer school for this coming year? Do we have a plan already, or will we hear about that in the coming bit? And you don't have to tell me now if it's not a now thing.
No, it's perfect timing, actually, because, yes, we do have the opportunities planned out. It is going to look very similar to last year. We got some really good feedback from schools, teachers, principals, parents last year about the number of days and the time. So it's going to look similar. We actually, today, are having our meetings with principals. So secondary had one this morning, and then elementary is at 2:30. The principals already know the sites, who are the host sites, who are the partner school sites. They have a lot of information already, but they'll get the bulk of it today at our 2:30 meeting. And like I said, secondary got theirs this morning, and every department will be in that meeting.
Okay, cool. So this year, because we still have ESSER funding, it's going to look very similar, and then we're going to come up with lots of amazing grants to continue on the good work next year.
Exactly right.
Perfect. My only other remark I was going to make as like a thought for principals is creating this, being able to hire these tutors, these 6-hour tutors, has created a unique thought for some principals as they forecast into next year. So sometimes principals don't have enough money in their title budget to purchase, or we are encouraging them not to purchase a ton of people too, but purchase like a whole paraprofessional in their budget. But they may have the funds to allocate a certain amount of money money for tutoring. And what we're finding as I talk to principals is that really great qualified tutors are meeting the needs that a paraprofessional may very well meet on their campuses. And a tutor costs less money. It doesn't have a benefit package attached to it. So it's a unique individual who is able to have that job, and it's a part-time job. But I think that if principals reach into their community and look for some really great, maybe retirees or other people who would love part-time jobs, it may be a way for people to line item tutoring into their title budget without having to put a whole paraprofessional position. And then that's also something that they can use throughout the year or just in a part of the year, depending on the needs of their students. So that was something that I've picked up as I've visited schools and talked to principals, and somebody mentioned tutoring. So I just wanted to say that. I think that is a great opportunity. And I know some schools that have more flourishing PTOs are even considering using their PTO fundraising money to use towards purchasing tutors, that they may not have the title budget or the opportunity to spend their title money that way. So I just wanted to throw in that nugget. Now I'm done.
Awesome nugget, thinking differently, thinking creatively, just, relentless, as you were saying, Dr. Gullett, about reaching each and every child where they are and figuring out what it takes and then doing it. Great presentation. I certainly extend my thanks as well. I had one question about specifically spring break camp, but also some of the other things. Are we providing transportation at all for any of these opportunities, or is it completely based on family ability to get our students there?
For summer school, yes, we have transportation. For spring break camp, these two programs are pilots at these two schools. So we didn't know what the interest level would be. So we're just kind of testing it out to see if it's something that would take off, that we can expand at a later date. So that's definitely something we're looking at depending on how this goes right now.
Okay, so possibly transportation in the future.
Possibly, yes.
Okay, because I definitely hear in the community, parents saying, well, what am I, breaks are hard, if both parents are working, and obviously they want their kids to be occupied doing really safe and productive things. So it'll be great to get that data and see where we can go with this. So thank you for that. My other two questions, I was very intrigued by middle school industry certification. I'd love to know an example or two of what those would be, because what that meant in my mind was these are kids that may have been disenfranchised that finally found something that they're passionate about, that they cared enough to show up every day or most days and get an industry certification in middle school. Am I thinking along those good lines?
Yes, ma'am. So it can be both. They're really geared towards students who are interested in the particular program. So we offer quite a few industry certifications at the middle school level. Predominantly what we see are students who are taking our culinary programs in middle school. They'll take the ServSafe, which is the same one they take in high school or in the professional world to get their entry-level jobs into a restaurant business. Also our Ag Associate Assessment for students who participate in the Ag program is a very popular middle school assessment. We try to find certifications for middle school students that aren't quite as challenging, because we know obviously those students are still in the entry level of those career learning courses, and so we try to find ones that we know are attainable for those students, but we'll still provide them with good credentials should they want to go out when they become a 16-year-old and want to go out and get a job in a restaurant. They can take that certification with them and use it to get them a better job.
Absolutely, absolutely. I really love everything about that, and it also makes me wonder about an industry certification for technology that is offered through different companies, because we certainly know kids are very adept with technology, and it would be nice to see them using that expertise in a way that's going to move them forward and keep them connected with school. So that really rang my bell. I thought that's just wonderful. Also, DJJ sites, Mr. Simmons touched on them a little bit, and that they factor into this. And I'm wondering what we're doing with our DJJ sites that may be different than what we've done before to try to reach this population of students.
Yes, and Dr. Campbell asked this as well, so I'll answer both of those. Dr. Hembrook works closely with the alternative sites. She and her team visit the sites frequently. In addition to that support that is provided to the schools directly, the principals and the assistant principals attend our professional leadership learning sessions each month. They are invited, they are included in all of our weekly memos to the principals, also our curriculum connections, so that teachers and the administrative staffs have access to that professional leadership and learning.
Okay, good, because I feel like I heard that there's going to be a lot more computer-based learning in these kids' futures, and I am a little concerned about that because I feel like if they weren't making it in front of hopefully a good teacher to try to do that as part of an online program, and there's probably lots of embedded tutoring and teaching within those, I hope. But I also know that funding is tight everywhere, and everyone's looking for ways to be able to do good things less expensively. So that was part of my reason for asking too.
Yes, ma'am. They are, just yesterday, we worked on instructional technology and the professional learning that's needed for that. So it is a focus for all of us.
Absolutely, and I know that a lot of our complexes that house these students are in rural areas, so a lot of times the internet connections can be a little spotty, especially within the thick walls of a prison. So just, some logistical things that make me worry a little bit. So I look forward to hearing more on that moving forward. I think other board members covered, everything else that I might have had. So again, I'll extend my thanks for a great presentation. And if you have something else? Yes,
Sure,
go ahead.
Chair, I just had one other really quick question. Since we were talking certifications, is there a place in Skyward or Family Access where those certifications are held? Because perhaps my children just don't have them. But while we're sitting here, I'm like, wonder if any of my kids have taken a certification exam for anything. Where would that be found so families actually could see what certifications their students may have already achieved?
Yes, they are, but I'll let Mr. Whitehouse respond.
He's our guru.
So we do track those through Skyward, and that's actually how we report them to the state of Florida. We log those in with our Survey 5 reporting that occurs in the fall, so they are available in there. I'd have to double check on the family portal. So what we provide to families through the family portal on our end is actually through Performance Matters, and I don't believe we have those logged into Performance Matters. So they can access any of their district assessments that we provide through the family portal, and then of course the state has their own state family portal for the state FAST assessments.
Sure, so if there was an ability or possibility to add that somehow in, especially in light of this board, other school boards around the state have been talking about graduation requirement changes potentially in the future. 2025, we may be really talking serious legislation about how certifications may tie into a graduation requirement, even in lieu of some graduation requirements. So I think wherever we place those, if there's a way for families actually to track that, I could see that being a huge benefit.
Yes, ma'am, we'll take that back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Campbell. Anything else for the good of the cause on this presentation? Okay. Hearing none, is there any public comment? Hearing none. We will, Board, if it's your pleasure, take about a 10-minute break before we move into our next item. So it is 10:44. We'll take about a 10-minute break. Thank you. Thank you. We are back from our recess and to continue our work session at 10:55 a.m. Dr. Gullett, you want to introduce the next item, please?
Certainly happy to. Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm happy to introduce Mr. Stephen Ayers, who's going to provide an introduction to the Ocala Charter Middle School's renewal application. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Ayers.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Madam Co-Chair, board members, Dr. Gullett, Attorney Powers, Ms. Martinez. I'm here today because Ocala Charter Middle School is due for their charter contract renewal. And part of the renewal process is an application. And so the original contract with Ocala Charter Middle School was approved and signed on January 14th, 2014. The contract was renewed in 2019. The current contract that they're under expires June 30th, 2024. If we approve the application, the renewal contract will be in effect starting in July 2024. Florida statute dictates the charter renewal application process. Florida statute states that a charter may be renewed provided that a program review demonstrates that the criteria in the original charter application have been acceptably accomplished and that none of the grounds for non-renewal established by Florida statute exists. Marion County Public Schools staff evaluated the application that was provided by Marion Ocala Charter and the renewal, using the renewal evaluation instrument, which was included on your packet, and found that Ocala Charter Middle School meets all the criteria for renewal. The next steps: if the renewal application is approved, which will be on a board agenda, the district can enter into contract negotiations with Ocala Charter Middle School. The new charter contract will need to be approved prior to June 30th, 2024. And understand, the charter contract is not a contract for goods or services. It's a contract to sponsor the charter school that will open up. I have Ms. T.C. Matthews, who's the executive director of Ocala Charter Middle School, here to answer questions. She will do an actual formal presentation and the report to the board in April. So if you have specific questions about the charter renewal application that she submitted, she is here to answer those specific questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ayers.
And so that is my presentation.
That was a great presentation.
Just the way we like them.
Right. Any questions, board?
I just have one question.
Yes, go ahead.
Is the site of the school a part of the application?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so if the site of the school changed, we're obviously all aware they took on a parcel where Ocala High is and the community talks. So if the site of Ocala Middle were to change, that would not have any implications on their application?
No, ma'am. The only implications that would have is each school has an MSID number, which is through the Department of Education, and we would have to update the MSID number. And obviously the site would have to meet, or the building would have to meet whatever code regulations by state.
Okay.
But no, ma'am, the actual site location is not part of the contract.
Is there a timeline in which families would be required to be notified of a change in site ahead of a school year, or is that dictated at all?
That's not dictated at all. Obviously, the charter school would have relationships with their families, and they would want to retain their families, and so they would do a job. But there's nothing that dictates that you must do X, Y, or Z prior.
Okay, that was my only question. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member James. Any other questions or comments from the board? Thank you, and I will just say congratulations to T.C. Matthews. It's always great to see you, and your team is amazing. You have definitely a great track record of fulfilling important needs for students, and you really are a great partner. So I've also heard that the high school is going well, and every wish for continued success. I think it's a really stellar example and role model of what a public charter school partnership can and should be. So thank you. All right. With that, I will ask if there is anything else from Dr. Gullett.
Nothing further. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any public comment? Don't all rush at once. All right. Hearing none, we will close that item. Thank you, Mr. Ayers, as always. And Dr. Gullett, I think we're moving on to our final agenda item.
We certainly are. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm pleased to bring forward Mr. David Hurley, and he is going to provide some updated information with regard to the scheduled joint workshop with the Board of County Commissioners of Marion County, which is scheduled to occur on March 27th at 9 a.m. You may recall we talked about this briefly last time. So he's coming forward to give you an update and to establish some topics that you would like to see board for that joint meeting.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Hurley.
Okay, good morning, Chair Thrower, board members, Dr. Gullett, Attorney Powers, and Mrs. Martinez-Lopez. The ideas or comments you have here regarding the agenda items that come out of this conversation, I will deliver by noon tomorrow to the county commission, to the county staff for inclusion on the agenda. I'd like to start off with a comment, general comment that kind of gives some perspective or context or background for the consideration of the agenda items. Make that comment and then read an excerpt from the interlocal agreement. So the general comment is that the joint meeting is comprised of the elected officials from throughout the county as well as the school board. And it's a required aspect from the, and this is the full length of the interlocal planning agreement title, it's a required aspect of the third amended and restated Marion County Interlocal Agreement for Public School Facility Planning. So we frequently just, shorten it to Public School Planning Interlocal Agreement. So having said that, then my excerpt is from Section 2.2 of the interlocal agreement, and that is with regard to the topics or the objectives of the public school planning officials joint meeting. That is, the joint planning workshop shall provide opportunities to consider recommendations, discuss policy, set direction, and reach understandings concerning issues of mutual concern regarding public education and coordination of land use and school facilities planning. Incidentally, I believe you heard this at your work session on the 22nd. I think perhaps it was the superintendent had read this to you then.
Yes, and if I may pause you right there, Mr. Hurley, I know you were out. I'm sending that board to you right now because I know you were supposed to get that in writing, so I'm in the process of sending that to you right now, so you have it as Mr. Hurley is reading the purpose of the workshop.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. So I had finished with coordination of land use and school facilities planning, and then this is inclusive of, but not limited to, population and student growth, development trends, school needs, off-site improvements, school capacity, school funding options, which would be for the purpose of reducing the need for additional permanent student stations, roadway improvements, joint use opportunities, the district facilities work program, and the educational plant survey. So I'll finish by saying that each of these items, the majority of them have their own section in the interlocal agreement. An example being off-site utilities and a requirement to do off-site utilities agreements. So for in the example of building new schools like we are now, we are responsible to interact with the local governments and coordinate the timing, the costs, the responsibility for constructing and paying, and then coordinate those agreements. So any of those kind of topics like that are the sort of thing that you may want to discuss, and I'm certain that anything in addition to that. So I'll stand by and follow your lead, Chair Thrower.
Thank you, Mr. Hurley. Dr. Gullett, did you have anything you wanted to share regarding agenda items?
No, nothing in particular. I look forward to hearing the board's conversations. I think anything that we would say from operations would be that's going to help further the support of our schools and our students. So I look forward to your conversation. And I did send that to you, and Attorney Powers, you also have a copy. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, we'll open it up to the board for Dr. James.
One of the things that I wanted to make sure, I've only participated in one of these, and so last year, Ms. Dobbins and you all kind of collectively did a presentation on where we were and where we were headed with facilities. I don't know if that's the intention again this year or not. I guess that's my first question is, and maybe to Dr. Gullett or to Mr. Hurley, is the intention for someone from staff to do a presentation again?
That's the direction that we, and I'll say we, meaning myself and county staff. Last Friday on the 23rd, I met with Mr. Veridan, who's the Growth Services Director for the county, and we compiled an agenda that we thought would be appropriate for the circumstances, and the circumstances being that we've got a new ILA. There are certain different things going on. We've got a schedule of events throughout the year as to how that will work, the data collection, the analysis, the report that's due at the end of it, and the way that the PSPO will receive that report and then consider it at the beginning of a year. So an overview like that, and that in particular in consideration of, like you're mentioning about yourself, you're relatively new to this, hadn't been to it. We also haven't done that many of these in the recent past. So it's really seemed to us to be worth an overview of why why we'll all be there and what's to be discussed and how we would anticipate it proceeding. And also with the explanation that while the interlocal agreement requires an annual report, we won't be delivering one there this year because we've just jumped into the process and it has to run an entire cycle. So we'll do that throughout this year, and then this time next year, at the beginning of the year, at this meeting, we'll have the report in a format that's kind of settled.
And if I may, Board Member James, I concur. I absolutely think that we should and need to. And if you look at the language that's written for the, excuse me, for the joint workshop for the purpose, it's to talk about the improvements, the funding, the capacity, and there's opportunities there to show where we are, what our plans are, and to look at ways to collaborate with the county for the benefit of our students in the community. So I absolutely think that we should do a presentation.
So then with that being said, my personal recommendation is that we do like a state of the school board, similar to what we've seen the county and the city do at a CEP exceptional mornings with state of the city and state of the county. I think that this would be a great opportunity and platform for us to do a state of the school board where we take encompassing all of the things that are going on in Marion County Public Schools as compromised and condensed as possible. And we give a 10,000-foot view of the state of the school board, from facilities to initiatives to where we are with borrowing money and our other funding sources, and then where we are with building new schools and the planning process for schools that are in the pipeline. That would be my recommendation. Specifically, one thing I know that both city and county folks have mentioned to me that they want to be assured we are doing, that I actually, when we got the email recently for the new schools and the layout, the stacking of car line is something that comes up a lot. And the new schools have over a mile of stacking built into the footprint. And I think that there would be value in publicly discussing and putting this in there somewhere, that we have heard the city and county's requests for this, and that we are acknowledging it in all of our future planning, because we do have enough land on all of our parcels to be able to do this as we do new building, and to incorporate over a mile of stacking at both of the two elementary schools to get that traffic off of the roadway, which is a piece that the county often brings up that we aren't responsible for, but then maybe have been lackluster about acknowledging in the past. And so this would be a great opportunity to talk about how we are acknowledging that that is a desire of the county, and that we are recognizing it and implementing it in our new planning at the new sites. So that would be, I honestly trust staff to deliver a state of the school board in a great way. So I don't feel like I need to give you the bulleted things of what I'd want to see. I think everything from this little blurb that Dr. Gullett just sent in a 10,000-foot view would be perfect for me. So that's what I got.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Go ahead.
I do have one thing, and I trust the staff to put together the presentation too, so I'll just share this as a point of reference. Explaining capacity in a little bit of detail would be an important item for me, because outside of education, the idea of, I don't know that everybody understands that, you may have a classroom with 6 students, and legally that's what we are doing, and that is what's best for our students. And so I'm not sure what that looks like, but if we could have a slide that shared with the community, the needs of each school and each student are different, and we are required and want to meet those needs, would be beneficial.
Great.
Because that's the complaint. Well, you're not, there's just not any understanding really at all of what capacity means in education.
Well, pictures, to that point, like if we could include some visual aids in this presentation that would, for instance, when we were at Spar Elementary, we were talking about, well, I actually wasn't on that facility tour because I joined in at Anthony, but I've been to Spar many times. So Spar in that new wing has classrooms that are on the fish report per capacity is 2 classrooms, but they are served as 1 classroom because someone in their infinite wisdom decided that a partitioned wall between 2 rooms that are too small was a great idea however many years ago. And so, if that was you, Mr. Hurley, I apologize, but I kind of said that and then was like, But my point is that that space would not function as 2 classrooms. It just doesn't make sense. And so taking a picture of that space, for instance, and talking about the fact that via the fish report, this is 2 classrooms, but in all reality, it's 1 classroom. Because when you put 22 fifth graders in this classroom, it's never going to serve as 2. So I think the visual aid for the individuals who were unable to attend our facility tours that we had scheduled might be a great opportunity, because I don't think anyone in that room will have been able to attend our facility tours that we did as a group. So having a visual aid to paint the picture would be great.
It's a great point, Dr. James, and I'll weigh in on that as well. When you have a classroom that serves physically impaired students, so not only do you have wheelchairs, but you have adaptive equipment, standers and changing tables and on and on and on. A couple pictures of that would be great, because technically those classrooms are probably for 22 as well, and you're lucky if you can fit 6 in there.
Yeah, and indicating like fish report capacity, 25, real life capacity, 7, and
due to program requirements.
Yeah, yes, to me, yeah, and just showing like this is where that discrepancy comes from. So like it came up because they were like, well, what's the capacity at Spar? And when I looked at the attendance report, which I still absolutely love being able to access that so quickly, it says like 90. And if you ask Ms. Johnson, they're at like 105, because from a functionality standpoint, they are. So that 90, it's hard, unless you've walked the space, it's really hard to articulate. And so with that community member, I was like, well, this is why they're at 90. Remember those classrooms you went to? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, that's supposed to be 2 classrooms. And so he was like, oh, well, that makes a whole lot of sense. I said, remember that room that has all the books in it? That's supposed to be a classroom, but it can't be because she has nowhere to put the books. And so those are great ways to paint pictures, and Spar is just an example because it was top of mind. But I think that would help get the picture painted for the people who didn't get to visit our facilities.
Absolutely, and really help define the nuances, yes, and it's not hedging, and it's not dodging the question or trying to create confusion. It's called public education. Go ahead.
Thank you. And while we're adding pictures, since we're going to just give them a visual show and tell, I think additionally the portable classroom conversation continues to be one that we need to engage in even more so, especially in light of, I'll use Ward Highlands for an example, or Maplewood. We could go down a list of portable villages that we have around our community. I think there's a misconception perhaps of what that actually looks like, especially those that are so aging and not bathroom accessible, and that we've had them for 40 or 50 years, et cetera, et cetera. So the fish report may say one thing, but then these portables have come off the list and they're not actually included. And so there's a lot of information that we can include there. I do have a couple of other things that I thought about that we as a board could discuss. While we're talking slides to include, I think just one quick slide, even though it's not facilities related, but to show district grade improvement and to show academic data improvement, because that's also something that I'm hearing from other governmental entities and elected officials, that you need all this money, but you're not actually improving anything from an academic standpoint. So I think that also would be helpful to be able to see what we are doing with the work that is being done. So on to joint collaborative potential conversations. So I did have a phone call the last couple of days with Chief Banta of Marion County Fire Rescue, because heading into this meeting, I was thinking, okay, well, you're needing fire stations, we're building schools, we have land, talk to me about where you're wanting fire stations. And he said, well, if we had had this conversation 6 months ago, perhaps I would say, let's do some things on some of your Marion Oaks property. Unfortunately, he's been purchasing land all over Marion Oaks where he needs them, or that would have been a great opportunity for us. The other locations, I reached out to Ms. Dobbins. He needs one in Silver Spring Shores, but we only have 30 acres for the Lake Weir replacement. So I don't think it's going to be feasible necessarily for us to make that a point of conversation. I was hoping so. I was hoping that perhaps with our 100+ acres where the new high school is going to go, that we could say, hey, let's work together and actually have an emergency facility on the same property as a high school or a school. I don't think that's going to be possible, unfortunately. But I am curious to know, and when I was at Marion County Day, I don't know if I've told you all this, but over dinner at Marion County Day, sitting with the chair of the county commission and a couple of a state senator and state representative, the conversation came up about actual real county needs. One of them that was brought up by Chair Stone was a special needs shelter. And so I think that would be a wonderful topic of conversation to see if we as a school board and county commission could collectively go in for a joint appropriation request for 2025 for a special needs shelter. That would certainly benefit us because we would not have to be closing a school just for special needs in the event of a hurricane. And I think obviously that would benefit the entire community. So whether that's a joint appropriation and we have to somehow say, okay, we would put in this amount, you would put in that amount, we don't have any money to give, I understand, but potentially we might have some land, we might have, so I think there's a greater conversation there. So I don't know if there are other opportunities like that we can talk about in this joint workshop. If there are other potential collaborative, because looking at all of the things here, I mean, certainly it's school capacity, it's school needs, offsite improvements. I mean, we'll need to be talking about some of that roadway improvements. I believe there is, I'm hoping the county comes with their updated information. My understanding is there isn't a need for a request for their right-of-way that they're needing in Marion Oaks, because somehow that was already written into the purchase agreement when we purchased that property. But I think we need an update on what that looks like. That would be a wonderful topic for them to bring to the table and have a conversation on, since we are moving forward quickly on a Marion Oaks High School. The county will be taking some of our acreage for right-of-way because they are building at some point, building a flyover in Marion Oaks, and it runs adjacent to our high school property. So I would appreciate that. And I think if there are any conversations potentially about land swapping, I don't know what we have that they need or vice versa. Unfortunately, that right-of-way property, what they need has already been written in. So I don't think there's actually much of an opportunity for a swap more than a conversation. And so I think that was a previous board, that was previous administrations that purchased that, and perhaps there's additional property that we could talk about in some kind of swapping. That's what I had. So I don't know if that sparks anybody else's thoughts, but.
Sure does. Any other board member at the moment? Okay. Yes, that definitely sparked for me, because I'm thinking about the fact that we're more land rich than we are cash rich. And I'm distressed about the fact that we work so hard as a board to try to provide the best financial increases that we could, for our employees. And now with inflation being what it's been, it's like it's evaporated that almost. And if we can't truly boost as much as we would like to attract and keep the best of the best, then what other options do we have to help potential employees reduce costs to be able to live here? And I think about the Affordable Care Act that I came across. That was Senate President Pasadomo's initiative. A lot of money there, and it wasn't really talked about. And I kind of understand why, because we live by red tape and regulation. And anytime, building can avoid red tape and regulation, I'm sure that's the direction they're going to go in, and I understand that. However, it would seem to me that there may be some opportunity to think about workforce housing, think about how that could be subsidized, think about how our land might be able to be part of that, think about how that may attract and keep great employees because they could be close to where they're working. Also, maybe even, and I know this is, thinking differently, but say a bus drops off at an elementary school in the morning, but the employee that is living on that property is working at an elementary school, maybe there'd be room on that bus. They could hop on the bus, Gus, and get a ride back and forth to school and save money that way as well. So,
Are you talking about hometown heroes?
No.
Affordable care?
Affordable housing.
Okay, you said affordable care, and I'm like, I was really.
Oh, excuse me if I said that.
Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
Affordable housing, yes, the Affordable Housing Act.
Okay.
From Senator Pasadomo's initiative. A lot of money behind it. So sorry if.
No, that's okay. I was just thinking like Obama's Affordable Care Act, and I was not tracking with you because I was.
No.
My brain was.
I don't think about that really. But anyway, those are some of the things that are in my mind that, we really had to begin to create a new path forward with communication and collaboration and come into the 21st century with our interlocal agreement and funding mechanisms. And I'm very excited to begin to take these conversations forward into the future of how we can actively and optimistically and collaboratively and trustingly, work together for the better of our community, because it's not just teachers, it is any publicly serving employee, which would include our law enforcement and so many others. So I really would love to open the door to those imaginative conversations that actually, in my mind, have a lot of opportunity embedded in them.
Okay, I have one more suggestion. As I'm sitting here thinking about Dr. James commented, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And this week I was fortunate enough to be part of the capstone projects, and one of the students in his presentation had inserted a video of him redoing a boat, actually. But I was just thinking about our challenges as our other elected officials were unable to attend our facilities tour. There was a lot of video collected while we were on our tours, and so if they were unable to attend our tour, we can bring part of that tour to them. So Dr. Gullett and I were talking about, we're techie, we're not quite as techie now, but that's an opportunity for us on our facilities slide to insert some of the video that was collected and take our other elected officials along with us during this discussion so they can see, what it looks like at Spar or Anthony or Fessenden or many of the other schools that we toured. And I know time-wise it's tricky, but I do think it's an opportunity to have a minute or two of a picture, a lens into what we're facing. So I just offer that as a suggestion.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Board Member Cummings?
Ms. Conrad just kind of jogged my memory.
You're muted.
Ms. Conrad just kind of jogged my memory. The tours that did take place, the one at SPAR, the Whittlers did a very, very good video presentation. Maybe some parts of that or our own could be pulled together and shared in the joint meeting. I do think they need to see what's really going on in our schools, and I think we have to be the one to tell our own story versus having other folks tell a story. So I think this is a prime opportunity for us to do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Cummings. And getting back to, you had mentioned something about potential land swap opportunities, if there were any, Board Member Campbell, and also I love the idea of providing visuals. Videos, quick videos, vignettes are really a wonderful way for people to understand. And I'm thinking now about there's a piece of landlocked land that for over 30 years has been used as part of our therapeutic horseback riding at Hillcrest School. Was originally MTRA, and now it's Stirrups and Strides, very well established, a gem in our community, and it's also now a work study site for some of our students that are able to participate, which is certainly a legislative priority and certainly one of our priorities. So I would love to have that be a topic to talk about opportunities to ensure that piece of property that almost runs under the barn. I mean, if we didn't have it, we wouldn't have a program. And these are not the types of horses that can live inside. A lot of show horses live inside to preserve their hair coats and keep them safe and all that. These are much older horses that have to be able to move around and be turned out most of the time to be able to do their jobs. So I would really love to see, while I'm still on the school board, that land finally be part of Marion County Public Schools, and by extension, Hillcrest School and their treasured therapeutic horseback riding program.
Chair.
Yes.
So I don't know that it's something that we can ask of them, but I guess I would be interested in knowing what all land they have. And that would be city and county that is already zoned governmental, to see what potential opportunities there might be, and I don't know what they will be. But we also are going to be having our own pieces of property that inclusive of the central warehouse and other locations that are vacant or about to be. And I think it opens an opportunity. And I'm even going to liken it to, I know that there's been some conversation that some CDBG money was used to build some facilities that I think the county's even talked about taking back over. And so I'm speaking specifically on Maricamp Road. I'm not sure where that conversation is, but there's currently a facility that's not being used, that was used with CDBG money, and the county it's still zoned governmental. So I don't know where that is, and maybe they don't want to talk about that because that may not be in a place to talk about. But again, I think it just opens up additional conversations about land that they have, land that we have, what our plans are for our land, what their plans are for their land. And that would be city and county across municipalities, frankly. Any kind of joint use opportunities that we have, I think that this board member, I think we're all at least interested in exploring. My hope is that they're coming with some recommendations too. So.
Thank you, Board Member Campbell. And I think of, it's not this land is your land, this land is my land, it's all taxpayer land.
It is.
And so having these imaginative and frank and creative conversations about how to best utilize public resources is, there's a lot of room for growth in that conversation. So I would welcome any of those opportunities. Co-location, shared use, we know our obstacles and barriers to the current spot that we're in right now. We tend to have technical trouble We had a lot of echoing, things like that. It was very nice, I'll say, to sit in the county commissioners' chambers on Tuesday and have very good sound and great updated lighting, and I think it was brand new carpet and, you know, the whole thing. It was very professional. But my understanding is that they're looking at an administrative building. I think it's now under the sheriff's department, so I'm not sure, you know, how old the sheriff's administrative building is, but it's obvious that there are some shared concerns and interest in coming up with a fiscally responsible way to house employees, to be able to welcome the public and have things go right when you're having public meetings. So that could be another very interesting concept, and it's actually not new at all. Pasco County has an intergovernmental center where there's lots of, it's kind of like a one-stop shop, and they're a big county too. So again, I think that when people cordially put their heads together in good faith and staff gets wind of it, they can come up with all kinds of potential ideas that'll really help move our community forward in a partnering way.
And sorry, Chair, one more thing. Like, we just keep,
I know, we keep
all these things that like we've been talking about, but we've never actually, or at least I've been thinking and or talking, but never publicly actually putting this to the forefront. I think there's also opportunity. I'm focused solely on this joint use opportunities. So that's how, as far as I'm concerned, that fits, because most of what this intergovernmental meeting is about is school needs and school capacity and school funding, but it includes joint use opportunities. So another joint use opportunity could be a joint healthcare clinic. And I know the city of Ocala has one. They have their own physician on staff and their own healthcare providers that the city manages and owns, and the county doesn't. I think there has been limited talk about them doing something similar, but in light of us being a self-funded health plan, I think having a joint health care facility could be a benefit to us all.
It's a great reminder, because that did come up, you know, years ago, pre-pandemic. And then, you know, and same thing with the special needs shelter. We took a road trip, remember those of us that were on the board then, down to Pasco County to see their facility. So it's a great time to be bringing things up down.
Well, and when I worked in Levy County, we had that. So when I was an employee of Levy County Public Schools for 2 years, and in Bronson, which is considered the center of Levy County, which is hard to define, but there was a very small, like 2-room doctor's office, and employees could go there for free. And so it also, the intention there, and I don't even know if Levy County still does it, so that would be a question to reach out to Levy County's facilities on. But it streamlined employee attendance. So it created opportunities for people who were experiencing mild symptoms that wouldn't necessarily take them out of work all day to be able to get a doctor's visit and then get back to work. So I used it at least a handful of times. I thought it worked well. And I would certainly support a conversation around, even if separate from joint, us looking into creating something on our own accord. It's not going to meet everyone's desire, just like the Bronson location doesn't meet every locational desire for Levy County. Because if you live in Crystal River or Cedar Key, you know, it's not, Bronson is not ideal. But it is in the most advantageous place for everyone to be able to kind of have equal traveling distance. And so I would certainly be a board member that supported a plan to move in that direction for Marion County Public Schools. I think that it would be great. And if we can share resources with the county, even better. But
it would be another option.
Totally.
Really good.
Madam Chair, may I pause for a moment? I know Mr. Hurley is writing fast and furiously, and I am as well. A couple of points. I want to go back to the tours just briefly to say, outside of all of you who attended, thank you for the facility tours. The mayor of Dunellen was the only outside elected official that did attend, so I wanted to say thank you to the mayor, because he was wonderful in participating and talking about our work. Mr. Herlihy, if you could provide some clarification on the amount of time we have for the joint meeting. I know it begins, or I believe it begins at 9 a.m. How much time is allotted for the meeting as we look at the list? Because my next ask is going to be, do we need to have a priority list, or what are our next steps?
Without knowing that specifically, I don't recall that we talked about a length of time. I think that in the past, we've generally shot for about a 90-minute total. And then if it ran beyond that, it was a matter of, people would filter out as they needed to go. But
The calendar invite shows it from 8:30 to noon.
It's 9 to noon is our calendar invite.
9 to noon, I think at 3 hours.
My calendar
set
invite is
aside. I don't know that we've always, been there for 3 hours, but it has been 9 to noon.
So I think we'll need to confirm that in your conversation so that, I think boards, I know that you all had this conversation last time in terms of what items need to be covered, because I think a lot of these are going to take some time. So,
I would also like to address one for Mr. Herlihy that has recently came up in some conversations that I just had as of yesterday, either through a separate session with the technical working group or as part of this joint session. There have been a lot of changes since we last had an impact fee in the interlocal agreement, comprehensive plans for city county, the amended impact fee itself. And so there may be some necessity to have a discussion around whether there is any need for additional review of collections under the interlocal agreement. How are those handled? Is it smooth? Is it anticipated to be a streamlined process? Our old process for collecting them prior to its being suspended certainly worked. And so the question is going to be, does any party see whether there's any need for any update in that process to ensure that everything runs smooth once we begin collection after our 90-day wait period here? So that may, our 118-day wait period there. So that may be something that that is worthy of at least putting on everyone's radar screen, even if it's something that we don't come to, consensus or decision at that meeting on, because I think it's going to require that everyone have input, because I could very well look at that and say, no, what worked before will work now. And someone from city staff could disagree, or someone from county staff might disagree. And so we need to put our heads together to make sure we're all on the same page.
Okay.
So just to clarify, what I'm asking about is either for this joint session or for technical working group, given the changes in the interlocal agreement, the new modified amended impact fee, and where city and county have moved on with their plans separately from that old ILA, is there any need for additional discussion about the collections of the fees for the impact fee under the interlocal agreement for the impact fee?
Thank you, Attorney Powers, and I do tend to agree that the question does need to be asked at this. This is very timely, and we certainly don't want to hit unanticipated hurdles in the collections process. So,
Indeed.
Dr. Gully, you agree?
I completely agree. Yes, I think that's a priority. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anything else? I think we've got a pretty good brainstorm list of ideas, but they do fall into categories, and then specifics regarding co-location, shared use, imaginative opportunities, so hopefully it can be condensed.
Mr. Hurley, could you recap? Because I heard a lot of joint use, which is directly in line with the language, and so maybe you could,
Right.
don't want to put you on the spot to capture, summarize what we have.
Because I was just scrawling them all down as I could, and I was thinking to myself, this is going to take some, I heard certainly from the top with Dr. James proposing kind of a state of the schools or state of the school board, then I had that framework, and it seemed like that could fit into the agenda at some slot or another. If I can organize the various comments, and prioritize them, then, we could put that into the context of a State of the Schools update and try and fit it into a given spot on the agenda, versus just having a list of topics, for discussion.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think looking at it holistically, it would be great to approach the organization through our strategic plan. And so how do these pieces fit into our strategic plan? And work our way through 1, 2, 3, 4, inserting our concerns and our issues through the
specific
strategic plan.
ideas.
Yes.
Like health clinic, the land swap or potential land use of it for therapeutic horseback riding, some of the specifics embedded that dovetail with the elements of the strategic plan. That's a great idea, Vice Chair Conrad.
Right. Community and communications and community engagement can fit a lot of that too.
That's right.
So paraphrasing, am I on target somewhat with saying use the strategic plan as a framework for organizing the presentation? Okay.
Right?
Because student success fits in, obviously, positive working environment.
It really encompasses everything we've talked about.
It does. Talent management, they are absolutely asking questions, as they did in the county commission meeting, about what we're doing to ensure we're going to be able to staff all the places we're building.
Affordable housing.
Right, there you go. Affordable housing fits in that, and the fiscal and operational efficiency, obviously what we're already doing and and then the joint partnership possibilities and community engagement with health clinic and potential special needs shelter. That actually special needs shelter joint could actually fit in fiscal and operational efficiency.
For sure, because it is not
Joint facility.
efficient.
Joint facility, right.
Yes, to continue doing what we've been doing for.
Great idea, Vice Chair Conrad.
Yep.
Great idea.
All right, anything else, Mr. Hurley?
Just smiling ear to ear, Obviously, more things.
Hopefully it won't seem so overwhelming once you go back through, and it'll be easier to fit them into categories, and we can just really make it the appropriate speed of brisk, and still get it across what some of our major priorities are and opportunities to work together.
Right. Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of things, justifiably so, to talk about, and time is the main commodity, right?
Right.
If I may, I know my job here is to listen, write it down, and get it done. But I wanted to add, as I listened to the conversation about the off-site facilities, I think an undercurrent to me, which I feel that you all had done a very good job of driving home, was the age of our facilities and so when we've got the off-site problems or the classroom problems, those classrooms like the folding wall rooms at SPAR, or the traffic problems that are caused in a community, more often than not, those are tied to older facilities because the standards have changed and we've moved on. And then also, I think I surmise that boards in the past, in an effort to be frugal, had put monies that were available into building more capacity, and it's plain to see that we didn't always update the campuses themselves in terms of adding more staff parking. Staff parking just moved onto the grass, and when you add more space, more classroom, then necessarily more people make the pilgrimage each day to drop their kids off and pick them up, so that creates more traffic in a given area. So a number of those things are associated, I believe, with older facilities. That's not to say that there aren't lines with some of our newer facilities as well, but.
Right, but when they're over capacity, no matter how old they are, that spills out into the roads. I mean, Westport is one of our newer schools, and I don't know if any of you drive around on 80th and 60th and that crossroads at certain times of the day, but I've taken pictures of it before because I just couldn't believe in such a short amount of time how bad it's gotten. And now we have WEC too, and it's horse show season, so it's
Well, and
A lot going on out there.
absolutely to that point. So Chief Banta did say that they could use one on 80th, but I didn't think we had any property at Westport to be able to give up whatsoever. So I did just want to add that. Plus, I don't know that we would want to add to the traffic to needing to get an ambulance out in a timely fashion. So nevertheless.
Vice Chair.
Just one little thing as we talk about capacity and the increase in capacity and what that looks like, and keeping a student focus in our presentation. On our tours that we participated, the cafeteria and the media center was an issue at all of those schools because they were created for, to have about half the capacity of what they do now. So, they were created to have 380 students, and now they have 800 students. And so what that looks like in keeping it student-centered, I think, is important. And there were many examples. There should be plenty of video documenting, what that looks like at each school.
Right.
Absolutely, great point. And, when you have that many kids needing to be fed in such a small space, think about the inefficiencies for staff that we have, monitoring of those lunches and breakfasts, going on pretty much all day long. When that staff, if there was a better size space, more appropriate, they could then be in classrooms helping kids learn and helping us raise our school grades.
And just as a point of reference, sometimes you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And so growing up in Marion County and attending Marion County schools, when I went to the cafeteria at school, in high school, middle school, I waited in a long line. You've got 25 minutes, you spent half of it waiting to get your lunch. So last week, we had the privilege of going through a prototype high school down in Davenport. There was no wait. The kids came in to get lunch. I didn't time it, but I would dare say 2 minutes, and they had their lunch and they were at tables eating. And so just that visual kind of aha moment, this is what I grew up with, this is what I expected, but we need to increase our expectation. We should be providing a better experience for our students and be able to manage our time better with better resources. So just as a point of reference, it's something that really, yes, our cafeterias are overcrowded. We saw that, but then you go and you see something that runs efficiently and you get the students in and out and they have their food. So it was impressive. And the teachers. Yes.
And the other staff, so that their time's not eaten up, so to speak, waiting in line. All right, wow, that was quite a brainstorming session. Anything else, Mr. Hurley? Points of clarification?
The only thing I think of is one I had listed, thinking of myself, is just to mention the technical working group workshop dates. That's a main aspect, and it's something that the superintendent in the ILA is charged with announcing those, distributing them to the local governments within the first quarter of a calendar year. And so upon returning from spring break, I look to get some dates out to the local governments for those technical working group meetings, which incidentally, if I may just say that they are what I've been referring to as backloaded or rear-loaded toward the end of the year. And when I started my comments today, I said about how we run through. We've just started with February. I received data from each of the local governments. And so now, over the next period of months, the idea is to review that, compile it, clean it, prepare it, analyze it, and then see what pops out of it, and form that up for next year's report that will go through the TWG and to the planning, the public school planning officials for an early year review. But so those, with all of that said, that sequence, we would get past or to around where budget time of the year is, where we're doing our work plan and budgets are in for the school board as well as the local governments. Everybody kind of has an idea of, what they have and what their projects are. So that all combines there. And then by getting to the latter portion of the year and doing 2 meetings, one in September and another one in November, then we would be able to make best use of all the year versus distributing the technical working group meetings evenly within the year. It's also a possibility per the ILA to add any one of the parties can request additional meetings. So
Right.
thank you for that.
Thank you for bringing that up, because we definitely want to get on the timeline and have this be established and flowing moving forward. So thinking in terms of September and November for the technical working group meetings of 2024?
Yes.
Okay. All right, and dates will be forthcoming after spring break?
Yes, perhaps even sooner, but certainly it needs to make it to the county by then. So
Okay.
we can distribute them by email or for consideration, or confirmation.
Right, and it sounds like there's been conversation with county staff about the timeline, and as you guys have been working along through this.
The timeline for
Yes.
these, yes.
Okay, all right, great. Well,
We
look
shared
forward
that.
to getting those calendar invites.
Coming up. That's
Mr.
all.
Hurley, do you have anything else? I think that covered it, didn't it?
I think that covers.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Is there any public comment? All right. Seeing none, we'll go ahead to board comments and concerns. We'll start with legal.
Yes, I actually did have a comment I wanted to make, and I'll direct this to the superintendent, but also to the board. I don't know if the board is aware, I think the superintendent's aware and the board chair is aware, that after we last met on the 27th, it was for the next 3 days, after we made our decisions and we didn't have another opportunity to meet, for the next 3 days, there was a near nonstop barrage of necessity for questions to be answered, for explanations to be given, requests from the county on our impact fee, and referring to prior communications and trying to make sure that any last concerns or questions were dealt with and met. And I just wanted to say that for the superintendent's benefit, or for her knowledge, Mr. Hurley, he was absolutely instrumental in doing those things. There was a need for a rather immediate professionalism, analysis, and availability. And he and I collaborated on a number of issues, even going back months into prior discussions, say, nope, we've already figured this out. Here's that communication. Or, well, here's where we were relying on. Is this something additional, and how do we want to do that? And these along with, as the superintendent pointed out earlier, Mr. Minter's assistance, that was extremely crucial. So just want to let you know that for days after we met, there was a continuing, ongoing effort that required a lot of people to work on it. And certainly, Mr. Hurley's professional expertise was extremely valuable in doing so. I know that I would have fallen flat trying to do that on my own, and I don't think Mr. Minter and I collectively could have done it, nor probably Mr. Minter had staff that were doing the same thing for him as well. So those were very, very useful and very productive. So thank you. It's always nice to work and collaborate with staff who have that level of expertise, and it's a deep level of expertise that's needed for these sort of things, not a superficial level. And so I'm very appreciative of that.
Thank you, Attorney Powers, and I certainly echo that. It was a great unanimous result, and that's something to be celebrated and appreciated across the board. Thank you. Ms. Martinez.
Yes, Board Chair. Board members, if you could please respond by tomorrow, if you could, for your attendance for the summer conference. That is, of course, at the Grand Hyatt in Tampa. Those dates are June 5th through June 7th. The earlier I get the hotels in, the more assured I can get you all in the same hotel. So I would appreciate that. And as well, if you plan on attending the Gainesville Finance Forum, April
Yes,
18th.
the Advanced Finance Forum.
Please go ahead and send me an email as well, so I can go ahead and pay for your registration fees, so that can also be set up. That's all I have. Thank you.
Can you just confirm, summer conference, would we be staying Tuesday night or staying just Wednesday night, Thursday night? Because I know it's always tricky when we start on Wednesday.
I have not gotten an agenda yet, so I'm just going to go ahead and just do early, and that way we're safe.
Okay, so we would be staying Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night. Okay. Count me in.
The way it goes, and then sometimes if you're an officer, then you need to be there another night, or board chair. I don't think it's so much the summer one, it's the fall one, is the chairmanship. So, yes. And I think that email just came out today. This morning, yes. Thank you for jumping right on that. Okay, Dr. Gullett.
Just to say thank you, Board. Again, evidence today of your deep commitment to putting students first, so thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gullett. Board Member Campbell.
Sure, so just for confirmation, I saw we received a calendar, I guess, uninvite for that April 18th, that Thursday work session. So that's been canceled so that we have the opportunity to go. Perfect. I just wanted to have confirmation.
And to confirm, we've moved those items up, so they're already all established on a different day.
Okay.
It'll be a longer meeting, so bring your
Longer
snacks.
meeting.
That's fine. Okay, terrific. My only other comments, other than I probably will have more, well, actually, this is our last meeting before we really, so capstone judging at Bellevue High School was amazing once again. I continue to believe that that would be a wonderful opportunity that all high school seniors should have. To know that each one of those seniors, when they leave Bellevue High School, has put in the work to understand a career choice, how much that career will make, how much education it takes to join that career, what they have to do all year long, I believe would be a benefit to every high school senior in the district. It was amazing again, and kudos to the board members also that were able to participate. I was there both nights, and it was just great. So thank you to Bellevue High School and all they do with that. The only other thing I wanted to mention, though, in addition to the school tours that we've been on, touring the prototype high school was eye-opening and wonderful, and thank you to the team for putting that together so that those of us who were able to attend could see that in Davenport. But it also made me come back with questions just based on car ride conversation. Because our timeline is to open a new high school in August of 2026, and knowing the timeline it takes to actually build that, we, as a district, and potentially Dr. Gullett already has this knowledge of what we're doing, but we have to know what CTE programs are going in that, if the principal leader is going to have any buy-in whatsoever. According to the architects, they have to have all drawings to us by August of this year, and that's in order for us to be in a high school in August 2026, there are a lot of things that have to be done between now and August, inclusive of potential additional board meetings that we may need to hold. I know there's information coming to us at the end of the month in the board meeting, hopefully to choose the architect, if that is the choice that we're going to make, which all indications I have, I loved it, let's go with it, but I'm just one person. But understanding of what is in that high school, especially with CTE, they have an extensive culinary program. My understanding is that's not what we're going to put in the high school that we're going to build. So I don't know if that is something that the board needs to be briefed on, or if it's just something that we'll learn over time. But learning all of that process and knowing how long it really is going to take to build a high school, it's different than building an elementary school, and elementary schools are pretty similar. They all have very similar offerings, but a high school is going to be a lot more in-depth on what we're specifically offering. So those are my thoughts, and I don't know if that's actually a question I'm asking, if the board will be briefed on what we're going to be doing there, or if we're just going to go along for the ride. So
I can say, Board, that we're on track for planning. And so as those programs are rolled out and solidified, you'll be made aware. Principal decision. Principal doesn't get announced till much later in the process. We are in planning and looking at big picture of the district needs for the students. Everything you heard earlier today at the presentation, all of that's well underway.
Thank you, Dr. Gullett. It's an exciting process. Yes.
Just to, because the calendar conversation started yesterday, we will be starting the application process for CMs in April. So we should have the CM as a facilities committee determined by the end of April.
Good information. Thank you. Anything else, Board Member?
That's all I had. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. We'll move over to Dr. James.
Hi. So great work by everybody. I'm excited for the direction we're going, the work we're doing, and telling our story. I'm grateful for the Board of County Commissioners for unanimously approving our impact fees. I feel like the journey was long. It's kind of like that saying they say about your kids, the days are long and the years go fast. It felt like the journey was really long, but it also feels like it just yesterday I got sworn in and now here we are. So what I'm grateful for is that we are going to start collecting impact fees and we are going to have an additional revenue stream for our capital funds for Marion County Public Schools. So I am grateful for that, and that will solidify, along with the bondage conversations that we've already had and will continue to have, funding sources to continue to do facility improvements and address growth needs. So grateful for that. I wanted to, as we were in the county commissioners' chambers 2 days ago, 1 day ago, I don't know, they all run together, whatever day that was, Tuesday, something had came to mind that I wanted to bring up to the board. And I've noticed it before, but in a recent meeting, Dr. Campbell made a remark about cell phone usage and distractions, and as I was watching the county commissioners meeting, I was reminded of their layout, and so I wanted to make a recommendation to the board, take it or leave it, it doesn't matter to me, but I noticed that in the county commissioners meeting, they have the 5 commissioners in the center, and then to the side is auxiliary staff who supports the functionality of the meeting. And so I just wanted to make the recommendation to the board to potentially put our board clerk and attorney off to the right or the left-hand side, because I know that they oftentimes do not have active participation in our meetings and have other work that they need to be doing. Obviously, I sit next to the attorney, and so there's oftentimes when he's working on other things than just the business of our meeting, because the curriculum happenings, 2-hour conversation isn't necessarily in his purview. And so I love that you're working, because that means that you're not just sitting here idly twiddling your thumbs. And so in an effort to meet everybody's needs, it's just a recommendation I would make that we transition the clerk and the attorney to, not off stage, but to the right or the left, similar to how the clerk is at the county commission meetings, and the attorney, so that it addresses everybody's needs and desires. So that would just be something I would put to the board, and my comments are concluded after that.
Thank you, Board Member James. We're always wanting to make sure that everybody is situated in a way where they can be most effective. And again, this is where we have a little bit of a barrier because of the way this stage is designed. And I'm thinking that, there's county staff that is literally up in the air, on the sides. So that could be an interesting acrobatic feat with this stage. But I think it's something to take under advisement. And I think it's also something to, clarify that in this day and age, especially not from the actual board members. As board members, it's my expectation as the chair that each and every board member be engaged, and engaged in and showing respect for the presenters. And to me, that's just professionalism. But you're absolutely right that, we have a board attorney and a board clerk that have other tasks. And so my assumption is that's what they're working on, when they're on their phone or on their computer. You know, some of us up here have young children, and so I'm sure if you get something on your iWatch or whatever you're using, you know, for a moment there, you're going to need to address it, and that's just life today. But I am very sensitive to being a role model, and we certainly have complained about students and their cell phone use and how disrespectful they can be, you know, to teachers, and even moving through the hallways and being asked to put them up. So I think we need to model the behaviors, you know, that we wish to see. And if there is a way to configure that makes this stage even more productive, you know, I don't micromanage that. I'm all ears, whatever works, happy to do it, not a problem. So that's where I am with that. So good, thank you for bringing it up.
Any other board member?
Sure. My only comment would be to Mr. Christian, because if we were to put them off, let's say in the wings, then we don't have cameras up here in the event that they do need to speak. And we know that they both have script, whether it's proof of publication or anything that the attorney needs to read, we wouldn't be able to have them on screen. And so that.
You have the attorney for county commission, excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt, but you have visualizing the setup at the county, you have the county attorney and Monier, you know, they're at the same level, and then on the other side is the clerk of courts.
But the way their cameras are set up, they actually would have them on these columns, and so they would have the ability to shine a camera, or not shine, but to point a camera onto those individuals.
To that point, if I could amend my recommendation.
This is not a formal procedure.
I know, but for the purview of time, selfishly because Dr. Gold and I have a meeting that started 6 minutes ago.
Right, and we were doing great till
Yes.
now.
So what I just would like to say is, Mr. Christian, is it possible if there is a different way to lay out the stage that would meet the request that I made, could you present it to board members, maybe in Dr. Gullett, any potential other layouts? Wonderful. That's all. Thank you.
And if I may very briefly say, for context to this topic, I'm smiling at Mr. Christian because when we first came over here, and I know that Reverend Cummings was the board chair at the time, we actually walked the stage and looked at having a side. That was something I thought as well was helpful. But I think with lighting and cameras, that was a challenge. But we will certainly go back and review again and see what accommodations can be made. But I do know we walked that. Board Member Cummings will remember that as well.
Pretty exhaustingly extensive.
Yes.
For different reasons, but anyway, all right. Anything else for the?
They just made it easier because there's
Yes.
just a specific number of people right there, and then superintendent and the clerk and myself sat down, you know, in the lower wing.
Right, until the pandemic, and then somehow the chair ended up being in the front all by herself, which was, that was a joy.
So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Board Member James. Board Member Cummings.
Good afternoon. Very, very productive meeting today. We heard a lot of stuff. I was quite interested in the report that Mr. Sims and Mr. Whitehouse and all those that gave. It was interesting and very informative. I do too want to thank the county commissioners for what they did on Tuesday. It was an interesting meeting, but I appreciate what they ultimately passed. It wasn't for us. I want them to think it wasn't just for us. It was for our county as a whole. Everybody's going to benefit based on that vote, that move forward. We have spring break coming up next week. I'm looking forward to spring break. I pray all of our staff and everybody will get some rest and do some things that they need to do. But with that saying, I kind of want to say something to our students and our especially our seniors. We're heading into that last stretch. Oftentimes we get phone calls from parents because their kids have made some bad decisions or done something silly in that last home stretch. I want to encourage them to, your senior year is supposed to be memorable. for all the right reasons and not for all the wrong reasons. So I want to encourage them to make some great decisions. You don't want to miss your grad bash. You don't want to miss your prom. You don't want to miss your graduation because of you temporarily lost your sanity. I'll say it that way. You made some decisions that you just were not thinking about. So I want to encourage them to do some, be responsible. Be responsible in the things they're going to do, and so that they can have the best senior year as they're going forward. And then I also want to encourage everyone to please be safe next week on their spring break. Oftentimes we hear people drowning or getting caught in rip currents and all those types of things on spring break. Let's have a safe spring break. So that's it.
Thank you, Board Member Cummings. Vice Chair Conrad.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon. I do have a little list here, but I'm going to try to move through it quickly because I know everybody's got a busy afternoon scheduled. I just want to thank the schools for having us for Read Across America. At South Ocala, I actually got to go into a kindergarten classroom, which you know is very close to my heart, and actually the teacher was a friend of my daughter's. They went to high school together, so it really was just a special experience, and I want to thank Dr. Gullett for just encouraging principals to have us, and I really enjoy being on campus. And so thank you to the principals and admin for including us in those types of activities. Dr. Gullett, I also want to thank you. Last week we attended the CEP luncheon, and for the first time, really, and forever, I mean, I don't remember ever Marion County Public Schools having a seat at the table. And so Dr. Gullett represented us last week in sharing our needs and the facility needs, and where we're headed, what we need, what we're working towards. And so I really appreciate your presence. It really is a change in this community to have our superintendent so actively involved in everything, you know, that's taking place in our community. So I'm grateful for that. Again, thankful for the groups of people that have taken us on school tours the last couple of weeks. Also, the capstone projects at Bellevue High School were just phenomenal. And the students did a great job, but also the staff members. The staff and admin were there all day, every day doing their regular job, and then they were there late into the evening. I didn't leave. It was almost 8 o'clock both nights. And so just the dedication that our staff has in helping our students succeed and move forward. So just a testament to them. What else? Tonight, there's a program at First Baptist Church. The Elementary Honor Choir, I believe, is at 6:30. So I just encourage you, if you're available, to stop by. It's always a pleasure. I did also want to give a shout out to transportation and Miss Ashley Kemp. It happened on the way back from our tour of Davenport High School. There was an incident, a transportation incident in Fort McCoy. And so when we came off the road and headed straight to Fort McCoy, there were many district staff members that jumped right in and transportation that jumped right in. And I was just a passenger in the car, but they were doing their work as we were heading that way and making sure our students were safe, that parents were notified, that the staff had what they needed to do their job. And so I just, again, am amazed at the work that this was a Friday afternoon. Let me just add, it was Friday afternoon. So all of those people, all of those staff members were staying after, taking care of our students, making sure that they got home. And so I just really appreciate the work that they are doing. And along the lines with Reverend Cummings, just hope everyone has a safe and fun spring break, but be responsible and make good decisions, because we do want to shake your hand going across the stage in just a couple months. So thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Conrad, and I sure echo everything you shared about gratitude across the board. And I also do want to say that it is so important for families, especially this time of the year, to please review, especially if you've never read it yourself, the Code of Student Conduct. I feel like there's a disconnect. I am really getting tired of reading so many names of students at every single board meeting that are being alternatively placed. And you know, parents, school's different now, and the years of, 3 licks or 3 days that ship has sailed. And some parents are very surprised. Like, so my kid got in a fight, you break them up, you grab them by the ear, you shake them out, and that's that. That's just not the way it is anymore for a million reasons. And I feel like a lot of parents are being taken by surprise by that. And, we have statute we have to follow. And all I can say is that, when we have these meetings and there's so much optimism and so much enthusiasm and so many opportunities, and then I have to read those names, every 2 weeks, it's so disheartening. So this is a great time of year to reinforce to your kids, all the good things that going to school can gain for them. And thinking about our student board members, this is just something I thought of. I think it may be time, and probably past time at some point, to do a survey of our students about attendance. See what they're saying about why they're not coming to school, or what their struggles are in coming to school. We know the obvious ones, transportation has been a bugaboo. There's been some things like that. But I think it's important to hear from the students. Pinellas County is doing some interesting things to try to motivate students. I'm not sure I really agree with them, but I'm not saying that I couldn't maybe come around to it. We have to think differently. So that's just something that has been coming across my mind. And then also, very interestingly, in the line of attendance, the attendance liaison truancy court representative job description that we approved a few weeks ago, apparently there were quite a few applicants, like 67 applicants for that. So maybe they're hearing us when it comes to attendance and how important it is and what an important job that will be. And my understanding is interviews will begin after spring break. So apparently there was a lot of legitimate contenders for that job. And so that makes me very optimistic for where we're going with attendance, with the attendance response committees, and just that active focus on let's get them here so that they can do great things later. All right, that's all I have. Thank you very much for a great morning. The goal was noon. We missed it by 16 minutes, so we are adjourning at 12:16. Thank you all. Have a great rest of the day.
Pretty good, though. 12:16.